evening, pretty shiny peoples. Okay, I'm not going to be the main narrator of this one. So apparently we are all reacting to this video. And you guys are going to join us in that.
Yep. Thank you for hosting this. This is a video that I watched and I thought was interesting, but at the same time, I have two very good friends who I know is very much interested in economics and finance, um, Serb and Pixie. So I asked them to indulge me in watching this video and try to suss out what this gentleman is, is saying or claiming about um, the financial health of the country and what it runs on, which is capitalism. Um, and as you guys can see, there are timestamps, and at the end of each timestamp, I'll just ask a simple question: Do you smell bullshit, or do you smell pixie dust? Is he making sense, or is he not? Now, I don't know about Midnight. I don't know if Midnight is about economics and finance and stuff like that. Um, but Midnight, we'll ask you too. Whatever makes sense to you, we can discuss it.
I mean, I'm definitely interested in it. Just I only know like zero, maybe surface level. I I'm definitely interested in it, so that's why I'm here. That and among friends. But it is an interesting video. That was good
Okay.
because we were because I was watching it before and I was like, this doesn't sound right. What are you talking about, my guy? What are you high? Just I don't know. It just sounded so fucking off. Like even I also think that even if you don't know about economics and finance, watching this video will make you go, huh? Like you know what I mean? It's off. It's off.
Well, he did give some definitions, and so hopefully they are adequate, at least adequate enough to where we'll be able to kind of get the point that he's trying to make, right? And if there's any issues with any definitions, we can obviously discuss that to kind of parse it out to see if it makes sense in terms of the place where he's trying to go with the claims that he is making.
Well, I've watched a little bit of the video. I definitely haven't even gotten halfway through it, but I've watched a little bit of it. And I'll say my opinion so far is, when you get people who know like a little bit about something because they've researched it a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they're really stoned and they're just chatting with each other about all this stuff. And you're sitting back and you're like, parts of it are almost there, but parts of it like took the wrong turn, right?
Okay.
But yeah, but I tend to think of things as very gray instead of black and white, and so maybe that's why.
Well, I will fully admit that I deliberately did not share this video with Sir because I like to surprise him, and I think he'll find it even more interesting, um, and probably a little bit more entertaining. So, Sir, you got anything to say before we start?
I,
Are we
I,
gonna put any biases out there?
well, I mean, I'm not watching it, but I'm just, scanning my mouse over the timeline so you get the little pop-up snippets of what the video looks like, and I see at least one snippet of Karl Marx, so I know it's going to be completely wrong.
Oh boy, here we go. I'm glad we can all get our biases out there and our feelings. All right, so let's go.
In early 2020, I started becoming increasingly interested in finance. I know, ugh. But this was mostly trying to make sense of the logic behind what the Federal Reserve did in response to COVID, which I'll get into later. But the more and more I learned, the less and less it made sense. So I started deeply analyzing stocks from companies that I was personally and professionally familiar with, such as CuriosityStream and Spotify, which led to me starting a.
Do you guys want me to speed this up?
No, fine.
No, the speed is
only
fine.
because no, like usually I'd say yes, but if he starts like dropping jargon here in a little bit, then I don't know. I don't just leave it where it is for now, I guess.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Private fund that strategically shorted those companies. I even ended up getting hired as a freelance consultant for venture capital firms. Me, a musician with no higher education whatsoever. And the more time that I spent looking at and studying the big picture, the more that I doubted myself, as if the only two options were option A, me being unable to understand what every 25-year-old day trader understands, or option B, I'm right and every hedge fund manager and billionaire is wrong. But what if there's a third option? What if capitalism's death wasn't a mistake or something that the ultra wealthy were trying to avoid? What if the pesky burden of labor laws and taxation could be avoided by deprioritizing the goal of financial profit, or maybe even money itself? This video is going to explain or explore what I and an increasing number of economists think is happening or has already happened to capitalism. More importantly, I'm going to try to encapsulate the unsettling socioeconomic reality that we're living in, as so much has happened in the last decade that it seems foggy to us.
Okay. So before we move on, I'm asking this because I want to get you guys' first impressions so far and your impressions after the whole thing is done. I'm going to try to see if you guys are going to kind of have the same opinion after you've seen the whole video. Do you guys smell pixie dust or bullshit?
I
already
smell
smell
bullshit.
I think it's gonna be a bit of both, but I'm slightly more optimistic than Serb is because he did say he didn't in his opening speech he didn't seem to say capitalism is bad, right? He actually seemed to think capitalism is good. He said what he thinks and what an increasing number of economists thinks will happen or has already happened to capitalism, meaning he thinks that there's a change that's bad, not necessarily the system himself, and that makes me willing to hear him out more.
See,
But did you catch? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I already smell bullshit because capitalism is just a couple rules about how property and the market works, right? So nothing happens to it. It's just a couple rules. When someone says something's happening to capitalism, what they mean is something happened in the marketplace, or something happened to property, or something happened to people.
Well, I think either that or it's something happened in the way we regulate this capitalist market.
Also,
You don't regulate capitalism; you regulate the market.
Right, but if you add too many regulations or too many stipulations, is it really even capitalism?
Yep.
Like,
As long as you have the couple rules, still capitalism.
okay, well that's fair.
also,
So maybe he's going to have a broader definition. Maybe he's going to look at it less like the person with the degree and more like the person from the outside trying to figure it out.
Okay, that's fair. What are your thoughts, Midnight?
yeah,
Bullshit? Pixie
well,
dust.
yeah, like it's bullshit. At least some part of it is like he said he got hired. He got hired by certain. I forget what he said, but he got hired. He's like, oh, I'm a musician. And these people hired me. Like, what?
No, what he was saying was his background was a musician and he didn't have higher education, but he got so interested in finance and was competent enough to be picked up by a venture capitalist. So that is the extent of his credentials. He's not claiming an extensive background, but he does have some experience. Is basically what he's saying in a roundabout
Okay,
way.
then he phrased it poorly. At least in my opinion.
Are you gonna stay with your bullshit?
Yes,
Or
I'm gonna stay with my bullshit,
okay.
but not because of that now. Because they still bullshit. But just go ahead.
All right. So now we're gonna move on to the next section. All right, let's go. If you guys need me to stop or repeat anything, just let me know.
Mhm.
You can't fairly describe capitalism without mentioning its predecessor, feudalism. And feudalism was a power
Okay,
structure in
pause.
kingdoms where wealth was
That wasn't feudalism. Was what came before the thing that came before capitalism. He's already wrong. Mercantilism. Mercantilism is a thing that comes before capitalism.
Can you give us kind of like a loose definition of mercantilism?
Yeah, like as opposed to I don't know, do it. It it's heavily regulated who can own business, right? The government may or may not set prices, or the government may or may not dictate how you can use your productive ability, but not anyone can own a business.
So it would be different back in the time that it was implemented, but in a global society, I think the easiest way to explain it is the country that wants wealth and power, and so they think they need to like export way more than they import, right? But who's exporting and how is very controlled because of that.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's the reasoning why they control who has business.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it would be like lots and lots of exports, very few imports is kind of the idea behind that sort of system.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the definition on that, because that was something, again, I'm pretty much ignorant about. Right, I didn't know that. I thought it was feudalism and then capitalism. So yeah, that was actually pretty good to know.
Yeah. Feudalism is compared to like capitalism, mercantilism. Its main feature, the thing that you can identify it by, is that only people with government power can own property.
Gotcha. All right, let's we want to move on. See what else he has to say.
defined by the control of land rather than money. And our history books tell us that feudalism ended sometime in the late 15th century, but there's a much more recent version of it that would be a much better example for the purpose of this video. When the Civil War ended, or when the first American Civil War ended, depending on how far into the future you're watching this video, a lot of former slaves were offered a deal where they could continue living and farming on the same land where they were slaves in exchange for a portion of the crops. In many cases, they would only be able to sell their remaining crops through the plantation store. And with that income, they could participate in trade, which would allow them to buy more tools and negotiating power in hopes to eventually buy land for themselves. By the late 1930s, 2/3 of sharecroppers were actually white, and the Great Depression had shut down enough farms that many of the tenants migrated to large cities to become factory workers. It would be important to note that sharecropping is not technically outlawed today, it's just that American capitalism's growth made it obsolete.
Okay, pause. Just, that's not feudalism. In feudalism, the people that lived and worked on the land were part of the land. Whoever owned the land owned the people. Right? These weren't just workers that got paid in crop. Right? These are people that lords owned. You weren't
Right.
allowed to
I don't
leave your
think he's
lord's property.
that is a totally fair point, but I really don't think he's trying to go into like the civil rights aspect of it.
Isn't
Although
it? Isn't this?
it should be a part of the conversation. It definitely should. A lot of people don't think those two things are linked, right? It should be a part of the conversation, but I understand why somebody would naturally skip over it, I suppose.
So what comes to my mind is, let's say a European lord. He owns a bunch of land, right? Um, he has people that's living on his land, and in order for them to stay on the land, they have to work the field and give him a portion of their crops, or sell their crops and give him um, pay whatever taxes to that lord, right? Now, I don't know if that feudalism requires the owner of the land to own the people, right? Or unless there's a version of feudalism where, for example, from what I remember in Russia, where the people were owned, right? Who were also working the land, and whatever portions they get, they can sell to other serfs, right? Or slaves. Um, is that more close to what he's trying to present here? Just a more Americanized version?
Well, no, because there's no contracts involved in feudalism. The Lord owns the land and everything on the land and everything that comes from the land. He owns all the crops you make. He owns you. He owns your house. He owns your kids. Owns everything. That's why he's the Lord, and not like the landowner.
So what would you call? So are you saying that by nature of someone being like the Lord or the king, he also owns the people?
Well, the king will own the king will be a lord of some land, right? But he won't necessarily be the lord of all the land in the kingdom,
Okay.
right? He'll have other lords that have fealty to him, but that king won't own the people on the other lord's land.
Okay, so let's go down to the Lord then. So the lords own the people that are working on their land?
Yeah, that's why people are not allowed to leave the lord's property in feudalism. They
That's
have to ask.
interesting.
They have to ask permission.
That's interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to look that up. That part I didn't know.
Yeah, what's super interesting? Almost everyone in the city, like in a city in the Middle Ages, was a criminal because almost all of them left the Lord's property to go to the city.
That's hilarious. All right, gonna move forward.
Former definition of capitalism is a system in which individuals and private parties control the means of production, and profits are the key driver of economic activity. And
I'll
it's
pause
important to
again.
note that within
He was so close. He got the first rule, but he didn't get the second rule.
What did I say? What did I say at the beginning? That it was going to be like somebody who's self-taught talking to somebody else self-taught in a cafe, right? Like they were going to get close, but not quite.
Yeah, like the second rule where you talk like where profit like every economic system has profit motive,
Yep.
right? So that's not capitalism. The thing about capitalism is there isn't an authority dictating the price of something. Right? There's no king or president or lord or anything setting a price list of how much a good is worth.
So it's just basically laissez-faire trading, essentially.
No, it's just there's no price fixing.
No, yeah, it's just demand.
Yeah,
Whenever
you
there's
Okay.
you can collect taxes on a sale, right? You can put even maybe a cap or a floor on the price of a product, but you can't actually set the price.
Okay. All right. People take notes.
in a closed system with no new variables, capitalism's success can almost exclusively be measured by the velocity of money. The classic example is the farmer
Oh my
and the
God!
cat.
Pause.
This tiny economy
velocity.
No,
Wow.
that is fucking ridiculous. Look, I can get 10 people together, give them each $1, and we can have one potato, and we'll just trade that in a circle forever, and the velocity of money will be huge. Right, that those dollars would be spent over and over and over again incredibly quickly. Nothing happened other than we passed a potato in a circle.
That was my thought. Like, why would you choose that word?
I didn't even know that was a term.
Yeah, velocity. I'm sure he'll probably get this part right because he brought it up. Right, it's just basically how often particular you look at your economy and go, oh, here's $20. How often is that $20 passed to a new business or person? That's all it is.
Okay.
I still don't know why he would choose that. I guess this will tell us why he chose that word.
economy has $50 total. The farmer trades $50 to the mechanic for tractor repair, and then the mechanic trades $40 for corn from the farmer, and then buys a barn cat for $10 from the farmer. And in this cycle, $100 has changed hands. So the velocity of money is measured as 2. This is calculated as the velocity within a time period equals the total sum of transactions over the total of money in that economy. In a
Hey,
larger
you got that
modern
right.
economy, the classic way to increase the velocity of money is to reduce interest rates. But when spending becomes reckless and leads to higher prices and reduced currency value, the classic move is to make borrowing more expensive. Governments around the world either control or have a lot of influence in interest rates. And some people think that because of this, the Federal Reserve should be abolished. And nobody could predict exactly what would happen if the Federal Reserve was abolished, but it would almost certainly result in a lot of turbulence in the market that would leave a lot of victims in its wake around the world.
A really useful way to understand how wealth is distributed is to stop using money as a commodity and use something that people actually use or consume. Let's say a can of Coke Zero from a 12-pack. A person.
So my brain has been conditioned to think about what he's about to go into in the terms of money, right? And so to me, him using that like an actual object, not that money is an object. I mean, like using the product itself in the example kind of threw me off. But I think at the end of this particular chapter, I did kind of get what he's saying, but it did confuse me for a little bit.
It honestly reminds me of Fallout, like like using bottle caps as the rather than as currency. Like he mentions, hey, you know what? I'll give you. Well, he's gonna go into it, but I'll give you one Coke Zero for I don't know a cat. Shitty
I don't think
example. I don't know.
I don't think he's talking about the bartering system. I think he's using consumable.
I think
My
he's
guess
going
is he's
to.
going to use consumable goods to show instead of money to show like a value difference is my guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he's probably. This is what people do when they want to switch to a commodity, whether it's consumable or not. They're trying to show how the value of money changes over time, right? To show that you lost money somehow.
Okay, because that's pretty much what he was demonstrating in this particular part.
So like I guess if you could make it like so if you tracked stagnant wages in the face of inflation in commodities rather than money, then that's when you get like a brutal picture.
Well, yeah. Well, I have issues when people do this because they're going to pick a commodity that proves the point they want to make, right? He
So
picked Coke. He picked Coke Zero. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to make this point, but I tell you, if he picked, like let's say a Voodoo graphics card from like 1999, right? He's like $100 some in 1999, and
Yeah.
and now they're only like 90 cents. He could go. I could make this chart again and go, look how much richer you are. You can afford millions of Voodoo graphics cards from 1999.
well, let's
Yeah.
see what he does with it, and after he's finished, I guess we can parse out the point that he's trying to make. Let's see.
Person with 100,000 US dollars in a traditional investment fund like Vanguard would come out to about 312,000 cans of Coke Zero in 2019. That same investment, untouched, is worth about 330,000 cans of Coke Zero now. So sweet, 18,000 cans of Coke Zero for free. Now, on the other hand, a person working for minimum wage full-time in Iowa would have made 43,360 cans per year before taxes in 2019. Today, in 2025, they're making 22,177 cans. Somehow, this person got a 49% wage cut, while the person with the market fund got free soda. Amazingly, through the miracle of inflation, the money decreases in value for everyone, while the actual wealth itself moves up to the top.
All right. So that was his example. That's the point he's trying to make. So I know we're in the middle of this chapter, but do you guys smell pixie dust or bullshit?
The bullshit.
Okay, let's hear it.
No, I think it's still both. Like all good, but then again, all good bullshit has some truth in it, right?
Yeah.
Midnight, go. I want to go last.
Bullshit.
Why you think it's bullshit?
I don't know. Just pass on. Go ahead.
Wow. Oh, I think it's bullshit because, like what I said before, if you took a Voodoo graphics card from 1999, right, and did the same thing, he wouldn't have been able to make his point. That's the first thing.
Well, yeah.
Secondly, he conveniently leaves out that the person that works a minimum wage full time
Mhm.
could actually cut a lot of the costs that they have. Because let's be honest, minimum wage people probably spend more money on things they don't need. They could take that and put it in the fund that the rich guy did, and then not be poor or not be as poor. Right? Would have reaped the same benefit in Coke Zero.
Okay, my problem is that there is a little bit of truth in what's being said, but in order to depict it accurately, the picture would not be nearly so drastic or jaw-dropping or alarm-raising. And B, it would take a lot of work because you can't just track wages. You have to track the specific price changes in that product over that time as well. And
So, oh,
all
go
kinds
ahead.
of other, it would take a lot of work, and the picture would be there. There would be a difference, right? Um, there are times when your money does not go as far as other times, but I don't think it would be like as drastic as that picture is.
So, one of the things that I have kind of noticed is that the value of the dollar is dependent on the wealth you have. So, this is probably like a super crude analogy, but like $10, like the value of $10, right, is way higher for me than a guy who's a billionaire. Like $10 is like it's point something of, you know, 10 cents.
I mean, I
Yeah.
understand that concept, but on the other side, I think that people forget, some of these billionaires, not all of them, I grant you, some people are just hoarders. I get it. But some of these people, they're not waking up tomorrow thinking, okay, I've got to pay my bills and I've got to buy some groceries and I've got to pay my kids' college tuition, right? They're thinking of all of that, but they're also thinking, all right, I need this many million available for parts and production. I have to have this many million to get that contract done so I can get this project over here started. And it might make me some profit in like 2 or 3 years, right? But this is a long term investment. And I need this over here. And so, is there a lot of funds? Sure, but how are they using it is a big question too.
Well, that's sort of the background to what he was showing, right? The the stock market going up and expanding happens largely because there are people running around doing what you're talking about. The stock market allows for people that work at Walmart to put some of their money in the stock market and then let those people that are passing around millions of dollars give those poor people money back.
Right. Well, I was just thinking of like a bank account, right? Like, or like a business account,
Yeah.
or a lot of that money that they have tied up in stocks, right? We think of it as like, oh, he's a billionaire. And yeah, he's a billionaire. But how many of those people have like unleveraged, like how much of that money is leveraged, right? In businesses, in projects, in all kinds of other things.
Wow.
That's a
Okay.
good that's an interesting point. But this is why I use the word wealth, right? Because I don't equate having a lot of money to being wealthy, right? It's how much property you have that has value and the value of that property that you have. I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense in context to consider stocks, for example, as property, right? But I'm just using that, to kind of say like, hey, listen, if I own land and my land is worth $2 million, right? And as far as I'm concerned, right, my value would be $2 million. That's how I kind of make sense of it. But let's
Well,
see.
sure, today, but that's going to fluctuate just like the stock market does, right? Just like the stock
Yeah,
market is going to fluctuate based on share prices. The price of your land is going to fluctuate based on property values, and that can be affected by anything from a natural disaster to other people.
yeah. So my value or my wealth is going to fluctuate. It can fluctuate, but
We're getting pretty far away from the video, though.
okay, yeah. Let's continue and see what he said.
I just want to point out what he showed
Hmm.
in his Death of Capitalism video is that there is a economic class of people that either consume up to or past their means, so they don't invest. And then there's a class of people who don't consume up to or past their means and they invest. That's all he showed.
Okay, so I'll ask you this question after this chapter is finished. I got a question in mind,
The concept
and your answer. Well, we'll get there.
of the stock market was proposed in 1792, but it wasn't until 1830 when the first stock was sold on the New York Stock Exchange. It was initially filled with railroads and banks, but by the next decade, everybody with a business idea wanted to have their name listed. This rapidly stimulated both technological and economic growth, and by the end of the century, the middle class was getting more and more familiar with investment. By the 1920s, you might be seen as a fool for not being involved in stock trading. In fact, you might be seen as a fool for not borrowing money to buy stocks. Many middle-class investors were borrowing with a 1-to-3 ratio, meaning that they would borrow $300 for every $100 they invested. This sounds absolutely insane, but it didn't seem as risky due to the introduction of futures. In the mid-1800s, the Chicago Board of Trade had a pretty great idea to make grain trade a lot more reliable and a lot less volatile. Rather than grain farms having to guess what demand would be at the end of the season, they could sell it at a discount in advance.
A future is not a stock or share, but a contract guaranteeing a future transaction. It just so happens that I have a whole bunch of healthy female chicks who will shower me with more eggs than I know what to do with in about 3 months. And I really could use a little bit of extra money to build an addition to their coop so they could have room to run around with and be healthy egg layers when they become adults. So
Okay, him showing off his super cute chicken, pixie dust, or bullshit.
He
That's
probably has.
because I always want to see the super cute chicks.
Yeah. I mean, I think he probably does have his own chickens. I just feel bad for him because even in the current state of eggs, where they're super expensive, it's still probably cheaper to buy the eggs than it is to feed the chickens.
Maybe, but he
So
showed me the super cute chickens, and
yeah, come on, is it pixie dust or bullshit? Showing off his
well,
chicken, bro.
if the chick is on the screen, it's I like that the chick is on the screen.
I'm gonna take Serb's silence as bullshit.
He
No,
really
no, no,
keeps
no. I
saying that
mean,
the chick is adorable.
like, okay, he has a chicken.
It's cute.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a chicken.
Okay, I'm keeping score, by the way. I'm trying to keep score of all of the the bullshit and the pixie dusts from
Look,
everyone.
I don't know anything about the eggs. Okay, he's not gonna make money on the eggs. It was probably a joke, but I like that he's showing me the baby chick because the baby chick is cute.
Yeah, I think so too. What about midnight or midnight?
Sorry, no, sorry. The baby chick is cute, so Pixie Dust, but I think other stuff that he's saying bullshit. But chicken, chicky, very adorable.
Okay, he gets cool points for showing off his chicken.
You, being an opportunist and a capitalist, can buy my egg futures off of me and then sell eggs to restaurants in the summer at a profit and make money without ever having to shovel the heaping amounts of chicken shit that I'll have to shovel. All right, let's go back to the 1920s.
By 1919, due to the popularity of futures and people's willingness to borrow money to buy them, a farmer could get $2.09 for a bushel of wheat. This was inflationary to say the least, and even made the sharecropping economy I mentioned earlier more desirable for a brief period of time. It started getting really out of hand, so the Grain Futures Administration was formed and implemented a large mandatory daily ledger and reporting system for traders. The U.S. Secretary of Agriculture would repeatedly suspend the reporting system, creating more volatility and more opportunists taking advantage of that volatility. Then, in October of 1929, as there was more money out on loan than there was circulating in America at the time, and as more wheat was being produced than the population could ever hope to eat, the elephant in the room woke up and took a giant shit on the floor. Everybody tried to get ahead of the crash, which more or less caused the crash, and by the end, a bushel of wheat was only worth 49 cents.
Okay, so I got a question. It's not about the this is more of a getting more context, right? So people were borrowing more money, but they weren't investing the money that they were borrowing. Therefore, they weren't making profits to pay back that money,
No,
right?
they were investing in this case.
So
Okay.
he said it was a 1-to-3 ratio, right? Or so
Yeah.
basically, like if I took out a $300 loan, I would spend 200 of it and invest 100 of it, right? Because I would expect those futures, based on those futures contracts, I would expect my return to be good enough that I could pay off the loan, right?
Yeah. And the
But
futures is
the
the
he's
bushel of wheat.
saying, yeah, he's saying that part of the problem, well, he just said it was the problem, but I would argue that it's only part of the problem. But anyway, was that people did this so much, like for this example in particular, the wheat, right? People did this so much that there was more borrowed, right? Than there was money in circulation. And that the farmers who had been, paid for these futures were all out there producing way too much wheat, which then drove down the cost of wheat, which then means that people are losing in their investments on the futures.
On the futures. So
Hmm.
the value of the wheat is really the devaluation of the wheat is a huge part of the reason why people were like losing out because of course whatever the futures is, it has to maintain value. But if everyone is producing it and there's too much and not enough people buying it, well, the value is,
Oh,
you know,
well,
huh?
here's a small economic lesson,
Okay.
right? What a lot of people didn't understand is, well, futures, like future contracts, right?
Hmm.
It's essentially insurance, except for it's insurance from whoever wants to invest in the contract, right? It's not just from a bank or whatever.
Hmm.
We went from a system where that didn't exist. So, like he pointed out, farmers had to kind of guess the weather and figure out what they could grow when and where and how and all that stuff. They took the risk, right? But as soon as there's a future and I can sell off all my risk, right? Even if it costs me a little bit on the top end, I sell off all of my risk. And if I sell off all of my risk, I'll just try to grow as much as fucking possible.
That's interesting. Okay.
So when you go from a system that doesn't have that to a system that all of a sudden has that, everyone's just like, well, sure, I lost, I'm going to lose $1 a bushel from what I was making before, but I'm just going to grow 3 times as much.
Which makes sense, like from the guy who's growing this stuff, like that makes sense.
Yeah, you
I
have
see
no
what you're
risk
saying.
anymore. Yeah, you have no risk anymore, so you just do it.
Yeah, so you just do it. Okay, that's fair.
And for the next 12 years, capitalism was a failed experiment. Well, wait, actually, for the next 20 years. We like to think that capitalism made its great comeback during the Second World War, but by today's standards, that was, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this word in public anymore without being
Can we
arrested,
pause again?
communism.
Can we pause again? Yeah, capitalism was not a failed experiment, right? Borrowing on or buying on the margin upwards of 300% was a failed experiment. Capitalism was working perfect and as intended. It was,
Also, did you notice what he just said? I'm not sure I can say that word without being arrested. Communism. Like, Jesus Christ. This man's biases are just like red flags.
no. Well,
I mean,
hold
it's
on.
a joke.
Trying to be funny.
Yeah, he's just trying to be funny.
Yeah, it was funny, I'll admit. It was just. Yeah.
Yeah, in communism, they just killed all the people that knew how to grow food.
Right.
But we didn't just go from the freezer to the frying pan immediately. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal founded the SEC to protect investors moving forward. It also introduced the Social Security Act and the Fair Labor Standards Act and prohibited child labor while securing a national minimum wage and workers' rights to unionize. Successful fellows with even a fraction of the wealth that Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos has would have paid a 79% income tax, and companies like Tesla and Amazon would have paid a corporate tax rate of 15%. But the C word.
Should we go back to that tax rate, sir?
Oh, sorry. I missed half of what he said because when he said union, my brain went, why does no one consider why does no one consider a union a business? So that I just lost track for a moment.
You want me to go back a little bit?
Yeah, like a union is the most capitalist thing in a communist country.
Yeah, it kind of is.
The Social Security Act and the Fair Labor Standards Act and prohibited child labor while securing a national minimum wage and workers' rights to unionize. Successful fellows with even a fraction of the wealth that Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos has would have paid a 79% income tax, and companies like Tesla and Amazon would have paid a corporate tax rate of 15%. But the C word wouldn't come until the
What about you? What about that tax rate, sir? Do you think we should go back to that?
Well, no, we're in competition.
It just depends.
Right. Our country has think of our country as a business, right? Or at least our marketplace as a business. We want to attract business, and if Ireland did it, right? If you need to go look up the economics of Ireland, right? They dropped their tax rate down to nothing, and now they're either the richest or like close to the richest country in the EU, like per capita.
The only time I use the interest rate, the corporate interest rate in an argument against somebody is people who don't know what they're talking about, because then it shows. They'll be like, "Oh, we need the 1950s economics." Then I mean like, "Oh, when corporate taxes were like at 35%, is that what you want?"
Yeah. But that being said, I think corporations are an existential threat in the form that they are currently.
Okay.
And I don't mean the amount of money they make. I mean how they're framed out and made legal.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
U.S. got involved with World War II.
I'm kind of surprised you said that, but we'll pass on that for now.
To say that the war effort stimulated the American economy would be a vast understatement, but this was under a closely guiding hand from the federal government, and it was every free market capitalist's worst nightmare by today's standards. Many companies were told what they would be producing and how much of it they would be producing, and how much they would be paying their labor force. American citizens got ration books and stamps and were only allowed to buy specific amount of staple consumer items like bread and sugar, and if you wanted to buy a car or gasoline, you had to justify a need to the government. Most consumer items that came in metal containers, which was like everything back then, could not be purchased again unless you recycled the container first. This rationing more or less lasted until 1947, and into the 1950s, fellas like Elon and Bezos would have had their income taxed as much as 92%. And again, yes.
Pixie dust or bullshit? Actually, let him finish.
In modern times, this sounds like a capitalist's worst nightmare, but it resulted in a 37% growth over the next decade and made America the richest country on earth. It is now literally referred to as the golden age of American capitalism. And despite a few brief bumps in the road, things just kept growing
but-
and growing and growing exponentially, making us richer and happier. And
I don't like that. I don't like what he did there.
Okay, so do you guys smell bullshit or do you guys smell pixie dust?
Oh, I smell bullshit.
Bullshit.
Okay, who want to go first?
Go
Uh,
for it. Sir.
I'll go first. The tax, like income tax rate, has, oh, I hate to say it, like almost nothing to do with that. Right? Anyone that handles a lot of money, right, in a business or any other way, can simply offset their income tax by increasing prices. So all those taxes are always pushed down to the people under the person increasing the prices.
Well,
But doesn't
that
that have to do with the power of the dollar, so to speak?
okay, but
Right?
you're looking at okay, he's saying like it led to this booming economy, right? But there's I mean, he's talking about a whole war. A whole war. Not to mention a lot of the job competition getting knocked out in that war and the baby but like there's so much to consider like in not just in supply and demand during the war versus after the war. Like there's just you can't just be like interest rates. It just I don't
Yeah,
So let
it's
me see if I
all.
can parse this out then, right? So the way how I'm looking at it is I think the tax rate, right, that for the wealthiest people, right? I think that has to be adjusted based on the how much spending power the dollar has, right? I don't think a tax rate like that right now in this economy, in this world, even if by some miracle all of these corporations decide to still stay and do business, right? Or if new ones come in and replace them, it still won't work because the spending power is not the same, right? A dollar back then is not it doesn't have the same value as the dollar that we have now.
Well,
So I think the rate has to reflect that, no?
I would agree with you if income taxes weren't a percentage. So it automatically adjusts for the value of the dollar.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
well, I think it wouldn't
Well,
be
yeah.
taxation that would be the problem, right? Um you would be arguing stagnant wages in place of inflation, which is a whole different thing than an interest rate
Yeah,
Hmm.
or a percentage.
the 50s boom was caused by a huge increase of businesses and investment. Right? Taxes, the only thing taxes does is it fights against inflation. It's a deflationary act. That's all it is.
Okay.
You can't tax your way out of anything but inflation.
Inflation. All right, that's right. So taxation actually helps to maintain the value of the dollar, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. What are your thoughts, Midnight, if you're not sleeping yet?
No, I'm not sleeping. Uh,
Well, I'm
I
not
did.
over here with PA taxes, but sorry, go midnight.
Well, no, I'm not gonna say yay taxes either. But what Serb just said is something that I never knew about taxes. I do understand why they exist, but I guess that's getting beyond this.
Well, no, that's not really the main reason taxes exist. That's just
Well, I never said it was the main reason. I'm just
okay.
saying it's on this.
That's the effect it has, right, on the marketplace.
Yeah,
The reason why taxes exist is so money can have intrinsic value to the people that are in that taxed area.
Yeah, well, tell that to the people who believe that taxation is theft. And I guess it could be argued that it is, but I don't know. That's a
So,
whole other.
Um,
That's a whole other monkey, I guess.
so do
what
you
if
think it's
somebody said
bullshit?
what if somebody said you should tax corporations but not people?
Then I think we would be. Then I think people would better like that. Like,
Okay.
don't fucking tax me. I don't give a shit.
See,
I'm not paying for roads. I'm not
see,
even driving.
see. This is something I hate to say, but the Supreme Court was right. Uh, corporations have always been people. Corporations. This is one of the reasons why I think they're an existential threat.
That's not true, sir. It's not always. They were defined legally as people in order to be able to bring a suit against them. Because prior to that, they couldn't be sued because they were not legally an individual. So it has not been always.
No. They were always. You could always sue a corporation.
Wasn't it for the purposes of?
There's the case where they tried to fight being sued by claiming.
Yeah, but and then you know what the problem with that was though is that when they lost that though and they became legally defined as individuals, that's how they got money into government.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no,
And
that's the
I
thing.
don't like
They could always have been sued, right? They were always being treated as a person. One of the reasons why they were always treated as a person is because they literally used to have a lifespan. When you started a corporation, you had to go, this legal person is going to do this narrow scope of something, and this is how long it's going to be alive.
But
We don't.
that's interesting.
That's
yeah,
why I
that's
think
Know
they're
that.
like we don't have that anymore.
No, we don't because Disney will be alive as long will be open as long as it makes money.
But what we did is we went, hey, we're going to make fake people that are operated by people who aren't really held accountable for what the fake person does, and then we're going to make them immortal. We create a psychopath and then make them immortal.
okay, okay, fair. Maybe
So
that
there's one
maybe I'm
argument
just
against it,
looking at
Marcel.
maybe I'm just looking at it from the psychopath area because I don't love where that went. I really don't.
So,
But I'm very big on I don't know about taxation. I took that because I'm very big on like regulations that way. Like I think we should regulate corporations, but I don't think we should regulate people as much.
so Midnight, are you calling
Yeah.
bullshit or Pixie Dust in this last section?
On the last section, I believe I will call half and half. You know, because like a lot of what happened during World War II like did help the economy, but the ending is like, oh hey, you know what? We became rich and happy, and then he segues into the most depressing chapter I've seen. Like, look at this. What the fuck is this? Like, it's so fucking depressing. Like, it's just like, dude, fuck you. Stop trying to manipulate me.
For people that don't know, right? When a corporation was made, it was someone was like, "Hey, we need something done that regular businesses can't afford to invest. It's too risky." And lots of times that was like bridges, right? That's like the classic example. Hey, we need a bridge across this river to help our whole entire economy. So someone goes, "Okay, I'll make a fake person, a corporation. Go, it will take a bunch of loans." Or take a bunch of loans or get investment from people. It will gather that money up, build a bridge. It will collect tolls on the bridge to pay all those people back. That will take about 30 years. So, in like 32 years, the corporation will cease to exist. And then the government inherits all the property.
Ah, interesting.
That's how it
Okay.
used to work.
Okay.
You know what? You know what? You know what? The corporation should run for president.
They used to be a force for good.
No, but it's funny because in my in one of the books that I'm writing, right? Part of the reason why in this story, of course, part of the reason why the Second Civil War started was because corporations gained the rights to vote in elections.
Jesus Christ! Imagine if that happened here.
And then you have pro corp states.
Well, wait, they can't vote here, but I might almost rather have one corporation have one vote, because what they do is they buy both parties with a bunch of lobbyists, with a bunch of donors, with a bunch of sponsors, because a couple of their donors are always going to outspend the people every single time. And that's when you get stupid shit, like when they pretend the people are winning. And I use this example every time when they said, we'll find the corporations that don't fix the problems that cause pollution, right? Well, then they went and everybody was like, yay, like it was some big win. But they made the fines so small that these corporations would rather just pay the fine and pay the fine and pay the fine than fix the problem. So nothing was really done in the fucking, like, in the end, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically surface level. It's to be like, hey, you know what? We did good. Pat on the back. You know what I mean? Everybody's happy without getting shit done. Like, wow, that just
All right.
lousy emotions.
I think when a corporation does something bad, we need to charge every person that owns a stock.
Was
That's
it
an interesting point.
was
Okay,
it
all right.
Harrison?
Let's-
Was it Harrison who said nothing has ever been done so systematically as nothing is being done now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the video. We're like way off.
All right.
But this is depressing. Okay, this right here, depressing as shit.
In the early 2000s, capitalism got so complicated that investors didn't fully understand what they were buying. And that's not an exaggeration. This was by design. There were trillions of dollars to be made by obfuscating what commodities were being sold in your average stock market transaction. A great example. Everybody watching this has heard the term subprime mortgage, but I'd guess that not everybody knows exactly what it means. It means a risky mortgage. If you've ever purchased a house, you may have witnessed the wild auction that takes place without your consent or knowledge the moment you sign the mortgage papers. And the average mortgage is sold 2 to 3 times before it's paid off. Here's an example of a 2005 style mortgage. It's an expensive house. It had ninja verification, which means no income, no job or assets. The credit score is around 500, and it has an 8% or higher interest rate. That's an ARM loan, meaning that it will be adjusted to the market in the future. The delinquency rate of a mortgage like this in 2008 was 25%. So anyway, if you want to buy it, I'll just take 2% of the overall value, and you'll still make a bunch of money when the loan is paid off. Why don't you want to buy it? Hang on, I have an idea. Let's make this a little bit of a safer bet. Let's mix it up with some other mortgages here, and I'll get somebody who depends on me for business to give it a rating. And then we can just call it a mortgage-backed security, which is a type of bond. And it's a bit like a future, but it's even better because you can exit the investment whenever you want just by reselling it. Now look at this. If that little risky mortgage forecloses,
Yeah, can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
No, because he is actually 100% correct. That's what happened. That's what those things are called. He might point it out now, but as it is right now, it's honestly not that big a problem. When it became a problem is when they realized, hey, we can hide any amount of bad mortgages behind this backing, behind the certification, and that big pile of not risky and that little pile of risky swap sides.
Okay.
Sorry, I was messing with the dog and I accidentally hit the mouse.
The timing was perfect.
You
The
get what I mean?
timing was so perfect.
They realized that the people buying them and investing them they could know baby in some instances, but usually there was no way for them to know what was in there, because it's not like this mortgage-backed security had 10 loans in it. What happened is we had 100 mortgage-backed securities, and we had let's say 100 loans, and then each of those securities would get 1/10 of every loan. Right, so those things were chopped up, just like he ground them up there, and then they were just smeared out everywhere. So that's why people had their homes repossessed that didn't even have a loan, because no one knew who owed what to who, where, when, and why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
I don't know if he explains it or not, or if he's just going to explain the concept. The shredder thing was fun, though.
Yeah, that's why I laughed.
I'm just
By
happy
all of
that
the
I
above.
could say he got something right.
Remember, he got that definition in the beginning right. This is the second
Half
time.
right. It's half right.
No,
Yeah.
he got the half right one, and then you said he may explain it in the minute, and then at the end when he said it and the little formula popped up, you were like, he got that right.
Oh, but yeah, but that
So,
was the definition of yeah, that's something else. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
so
So
I'm
okay.
gonna
So
get to
two
the.
things.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying Serb has said he's right twice now.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
2.5.
So I'm gonna let this play for like another 1 minute, 2 minutes, so he can make his ultimate point, right, for this section. Then I'll ask you guys pixie dust or bullshit.
And I bet you can't even make out which one was the original one. And this isn't like some risky stock. This is an investment on housing and land. And you and I both know that God ain't making any more land, right? It is the bedrock of American capitalism, and it's a safe place to put your money. It's gone. A lot of batshit insane things happened in the 2008 financial crisis.
Okay, so his presentation, pixie dust or bullshit.
I mean, the presentation was definitely hilarious. So I guess Pixie Dust. Serb did say that he was right about what he's saying, so I lean in towards his authority.
Yeah,
Well,
I will. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, no, go ahead, Serb.
I was just gonna say it's like 90% pixie dust and 10% bullshit.
Yeah, I would say that.
Oh, but
Okay.
that's only
But it's gonna hinge on what comes next too. I liked his all gone, but where are we going from here?
but that's
So
that's only because he really simplified down what happened, and there was those couple other steps that I said in there. That's it.
okay, okay. All right. Let's see what he says now. Let's see if we're gonna end this segment with the same feelings.
Crisis. I bet you could probably make some really successful Hollywood movies about it.
Object to the text!
Good. Ultimately, in just 6 months, the Dow Jones lost 54% of its value. Massive banks perished. Washington Mutual, Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Lehman Brothers, to only name a few. We needed another New Deal before people's bank accounts were wiped. And this time, we tried something a little bit different.
These are not normal circumstances. The market is not functioning properly.
Instead of doing something utterly reckless, like revamping and updating laws to protect workers or creating programs to help the middle class so we could be, on par with the rest of the developed world, we figured that if we just gave $700 billion in bailouts to banks, that money would trickle down and more or less accomplish the exact same thing. Now, you're never going to believe this, but it did not. Ultimately,
Wait,
Okay.
pause real quick. I agree that we didn't make the right move. However, right, I think part of that is because it didn't come with a shit ton of stipulations it should have come with. But anyway, because what people don't understand, or a lot of people don't understand, is if the banks fall, it's not just the banks, right? Like if none of those banks got bailed out, if none of those banks got helped, you would have the biggest generation, the baby boomers. You would have almost all of their retirement just knocked out, just gone. And then what do you do? If we're already struggling with Social Security and we're already struggling with all of this, and these banks are falling, and people are losing their retirement accounts, what do you do, right? I think it was a much bigger problem than people tend to think it was when they automatically think about that situation.
Yeah,
It's not saying I think we handled it right.
I just want to say he hasn't mentioned anything that is capitalism for like 5 minutes. He's mentioned a lot about the market and stock market and investment, finance, but
Okay,
nothing about capitalism.
that's fair. So we're gonna let it play a little bit more, at least to the middle of the segment, and then we can decide whether he's saying is bullshit or pixie dust.
while unemployment and foreclosure skyrocketed, the banks experienced a generous heaping spoonful of socialism. And to pay for this, we borrowed money and we printed money. In 2006, the Federal Reserve printed $148 billion in currency. By 2012, that number had increased to $380 billion. The inflation was immediately reflected in home prices and even more so in the great awkwardly socialist rebound of the stock market. In 1994, Jeff Bezos was a hedge fund
Okay,
manager.
pause there.
All right.
I really hate this government does stuff equals socialism thing. Like, I really hate it. That's not what even in the broadest sense, that's not what socialism is.
So do you see it in terms of whom the government is helping or giving free stuff to, right? Because if it's a
No.
situation where giving stuff to or subsidizing people
I
versus corporations, right? Then I don't see any reason to see a difference. To be honest with you, it's just whoever that's receiving the benefit, right? It's just different. Like if pets are getting free stuff, then the typical
well, 50
Americans would be
pets.
like pets,
Yes, please do
socialism
that.
for pets.
No.
Yeah, welcome to have
I
it.
just, I just think it's going. I agree with Serb. I think we've moved more into like government policy and government regulation, and I don't know how like that's the fault of capitalism itself, but
Yeah,
Okay, that's
but
fair.
government gives someone money. It's
Hi.
not socialism.
no, it's not.
That's why I'm saying it's not. That isn't so.
I
I think
know,
it's.
but you have
I still
to.
think it was a terrible idea.
Well, I mean,
But
hey, I
that was
wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if that wasn't a terrible idea. Didn't execute.
no. They were just they were afraid of the stock market or the economy having to take a dive for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but I
That's what
think
they were doing.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the confusion comes when you say the government gives has social programs, and people think, oh, socialism, social programs, socialism. People just tend to associate one with the other.
Yeah, no, like socialism and communism is just working towards feudalism without necessarily being owned.
Right, but we're talking about the
Okay,
government giving social programs versus socialism,
to be
which some
fair,
people go ahead.
I actually think it's a beautiful idea. I just think it's one that humans are incapable of implementing in any real sense that doesn't fail the idea itself.
Yep.
Yeah, because all those people that the poor socialists hate in business, right? They're not stupid. They're highly intelligent and highly motivated, right? So when you take away their ability to build a big business that makes a bunch of wealth for people, what they do is they go into the communist government.
Oh, but sir, don't you know that under communism hierarchy will be a thing in the past?
Yeah.
Hierarchy will be gone. Human nature will be destroyed. Give me a fucking break.
And then all those people that you hated owning a business that made your TV and hamburgers now control what you're allowed to do all the time.
Yeah.
All
Ugh.
right.
So you guys want to call bullshit or pixie dust?
Calling that socialism was bullshit. Everything else, I think, was fine.
Give me a percentage then, damn it.
Well, 5%, 5% bullshit since it was like one line.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Pixie and Midnight?
I'm going with Serb.
I mean, I think he's oversimplifying a lot. I said at the beginning that I thought there were times where he was going to get really, really close, and then we were going to take a random turn somewhere. And I kind of feel like that, but I also feel like we took a random turn way back there, and we haven't gotten back to capitalism yet.
Okay, that's fair.
Well,
I think he's gonna eventually get back there. I think what he's doing, right? He is giving us somewhat of a history lesson and explaining to us what
Yep. That's what he's
these
doing.
different concepts are, right? So essentially, we're just kind of judging his presentations of these things, but um I think he's mindful that the audience are all laymen's, right? This is not a
He's
presentation for
entertaining.
educate. Yeah,
He
I mean,
he's entertaining.
well, that and because I think part of teaching is also entertaining in a way, right? Like if your students don't find you or at least what you're saying to be interesting, right? I think it's harder for them to learn. Maybe that's just me, right? Or like a guy thing. That's why I prefer to like actually do stuff and learn as I'm doing versus just like sitting down and like reading words and remembering shit.
Now, I will say this is going to sound really random and people are not going to understand it at first, but because I am an auditorial person, I absolutely love his scene changes when he like cuts in to say something else. And
Oh,
it's not because I'm actually watching the scene changes half the time. I don't even see the scene, right? But like it's because there's an audio clue that tells me, "Hey, wait, we're going to switch for a minute or we're going to derail for a minute," and I like that. Just saying.
okay, yeah,
Hmm.
that's
That is
cool.
helpful to me.
So you learn by
All
listening.
right.
Mostly, yes. I am mostly auditorial. Yep.
I still need to figure out what the hell mine is, but that's besides the point.
Sir
Um, I,
learns by trolling.
I
Yeah.
do have, I do like everybody has all of them, right? But I do tend to lean towards auditory over visual.
All right, let's continue. Now he's gonna talk shit about our favorite billionaires and
You
trillion
ain't
dollar
trillionaire.
companies, whatever they are nowadays. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I'm pretty sure
But
Bezos is a trillionaire at this point.
nah, he ain't that rich.
No,
It's funny I
no,
say that, right? My broke ass.
no,
Yeah.
no. I don't like Amazon, but Amazon is exactly what Walmart deserves.
Oh
also,
boy.
also
But we're just
convenient.
trading out monsters,
Sure, I
bro.
kind of
Well,
agree
yeah.
with
What'd you
All
say,
right,
Pixie?
let
I said I kind of agree with that, and I kind of hate that I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hate Walmart too, little bastards.
well, I have mixed feelings about that, but I'll okay, so just real brief. I have mixed feelings for that because I feel like we what we did as consumers was that we traded out one monster for another,
Oh
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So I don't I how
I
should I
think we
put
did
this?
that a long time ago when we traded quality for quantity.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I certainly don't disagree with that. I think it largely comes down to us as consumers not understanding that in as much as we vote for politicians, right, like those people we put in power, like we use our opportunity to overthrow the government, right? I think we don't understand is that we also have the opportunity to overthrow corporations, right? Because how we
Right.
vote and put them in power is through our dollars.
Right,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, people have become too complacent
Oh yeah.
over
I,
the decades.
I'm so happy Odin said it. I'd say something almost exactly to the letter of what you said whenever I argue with a socialist.
Really?
Yeah, I always say I don't know why you hate capitalism so much because it's democracy.
Yeah,
Amazon doesn't exist unless you vote for it to exist.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why I kind of came about with the idea of um of that whole Civil War thing in my book where one guy's like, listen, the people kind of became conscious of the fact that they have more control than us because they have the spending power and their spending is their voting. And so if one individual, right, one charismatic individual or entity, right, is convincing people to not spend with me that's basically going to take me from power. So if by
But
nature of
the
by
problem is though that they've obfuscated everything so much, right? For example, when we traded quality for quantity, right? It's not just that there's more t-shirts. It's that there's more everything. How many brands of paper towels, how many brands of toilet paper, how many this, how many that. When you buy from somebody like Amazon, you could also be buying from an independent seller posting on Amazon rather than Amazon's product itself. And then we've mixed all of these things up, and nobody has any time to research every single brand and the ethics of every single brand and what every single brand has or has not done to the environment, the people, or the economy around them. Right? They go in there and they're like, what can I afford? Right? So I think yeah, that's a concept that's true, and it's a concept that's easy to say and it's convenient. But I would be remiss to say that this hasn't been like increasingly obfuscated and muddied and even reasonable for people to do on like a large scale.
Absolutely, I think I so so if it's a situation, because the way how I look at it comes down to presentation, right? Like it doesn't matter how complicated a system is, if you can simplify it in a way to where people can understand it, they'll be able to make pretty not excellent decision making. They'll be able to make educated and decent decision making regardless of the decision that they make, right? That's kind of the way how I kind of look at it. And so, I it it's part of what you're saying, what you described, Pixie, is part of the open secrets aspect of the United States, right? Like the United States have, in my opinion, like the most open government when it comes to things that directly affect the citizens, right? Um, um, but the citizens don't take advantage of that. So, I think that's an excellent point. So let's hear what he has to say about our favorite wealthy people and company and how they're doing all of this stuff to contribute to the death of American capitalism. Mind you, sir, he says American capitalism,
Yeah, it's
not
even
capitalism.
it's even more idiotic. Yes.
You guys want to vote on the title? Okay, we'll leave the vote for the title at the end when we get his full point being made. Let's go.
Who wanted to start an online bookstore, which was already a hard pitch at the time. Why would anybody want to buy books online when they could just go to the library? But it was even worse. He was allegedly transparent to his investors and told them that he intended to prioritize growth over profit for a very long time. All in all, he had 60 meetings offering 1% of ownership for $50,000. And the biggest investors were his parents, buying up 6%. With 22 investors, Amazon.com got off the ground with $1 million. By 1999, Amazon was selling everything from books to DVDs to household goods to electronics, and soon after, the company transitioned from being a retailer to an online gateway for other retailers. Amazon customers could pay a low annual membership fee for unlimited free 2-day shipping, and both retailers and manufacturers began to become dependent on that convenience. Retailers weren't the only ones with a dependency problem. Here's 3 stats that will probably fuck up your whole day. By 2021, it was estimated that 60% of the US population were part of an Amazon Prime membership. It is now estimated that only 1% of Amazon Prime members compare prices with other online retailers. And incredibly, while Amazon refuses to confirm this, there are thousands of reports of people finding examples where prices for the exact same products are higher for Amazon Prime subscribers. Does that sound like free market capitalism to you? Walmart.
Yeah,
That's the man asked you a question, sir.
it sounds exactly like it. Wait, no,
So
you
isn't
don't
isn't
understand.
that like engaging in a form of like
There's
price?
also no, because there's things he didn't say there. Sometimes are my prices higher? Yes. Most of the time they're lower. It tends to average out. On top of that, because I'm Prime, I get free shipping, and I get other services that they offer.
So it kind of
That's fair.
balances out, yeah.
I
Like
mean,
the,
that's fair, but I'm just referring specifically to the pricing stuff, right? Because if you're supposed to be a marketplace, right, as in you are hosting sellers, right? And you're supposed to not, aren't you not supposed to compete with the people that you're hosting, especially when you know the price of their products?
But you don't.
Hmm?
Okay, now you can make an argument for whether burying, right, competitive popular products in the searches and then putting that like as a prime product at a higher price from Amazon, that's probably not the best thing, right? But like he just scrolled and like he could see the price difference. Well, I can scroll too. So then I have to ask myself, do I want to pay $10 more and get free shipping in in 2 to 3 business days, or do I want to pay $10 less, maybe have a shipping fee and wait like for 7 days, or have to pay higher to get it sooner, or do like you have to weigh
But
it out.
so I
that's
got a
not what he was
question.
showing. Wait,
Yeah,
that's not what he was showing. What he was showing is someone that had a Prime membership took a picture of what the price was with his membership, and then took the picture of what the price was without his membership. And
yeah,
the one without his membership had a lower price.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, because
It
okay,
wasn't like it wasn't a different entry on the list
right,
that he scrolled
right,
down
but
and
what I'm
saw.
saying is he didn't show me that in checkout, right? Okay, so like in Prime, if I go to checkout, right, at that price, I know my shipping is included and it's going to be here in like 2 to 3 business days, right? If I go out of the Prime and I click on that item and I go to checkout, well, now there's extra steps because now I've got to pay for shipping. Now I've got to decide if I want it in 7-day shipping. If I decide I want expedited shipping, so I get it in 3 to 5 business days, then what does that price look like?
Should I do overnight if you
Okay,
can afford it?
well,
wait. You have to consider something. Let's say, so I think the Prime price was $35 and the non-Prime price was $25. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
can you go back,
Uh,
Dean?
uh,
yeah.
Imagine someone buying a 49. That might have been right.
Thousands of reports of people finding examples where prices for these
48. So I go back.
Amazon refuses to confirm this. There are thousands of reports of people finding examples where
48, 76.
Yeah.
27.
Okay, that one is
Dollars
big.
more.
I didn't see that one. I did
Well-
Sam auditorial. When I looked up, I saw the $10 difference, and then I was like, well,
Yeah.
but it's sometimes that like more than evens out.
Yeah,
This
that's
one's
yeah, but that's
ridiculous.
like
This one's
what
40
else?
to 70.
Yeah.
But why? Here's the thing. Why are they working the shipping price into the product?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because you're already
Like,
paying for the shipping price.
that's what
That's
it.
the point.
That's
Not if you're Prime, not because Prime is free shipping.
Yeah,
no,
that's
no,
what I'm
no.
saying. You're paying for it with the subscription.
Yeah,
I guess I don't know.
And
because
if
like
you
think
went,
about it.
oh,
Think about it, right? Like if that thing, that laptop or whatever, I don't even know what that is, right? Like that price, if that thing costs $50, right? That's what the retailer sets it as, right? Me having Prime, right? I should purchase it for $50 and getting my free shipping, right? Whereas what Amazon is doing is charging us more, right? Despite having Prime, while a person who doesn't have Prime is paying the $50, right?
Right.
Regardless of whether
I'm not
they got to pay
saying the
for
way
shipping.
they're doing it is right. What I am saying is there's an argument to be made. Let's say I'm paying my subscription, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about this $40 difference, okay?
Yeah.
But if it's slightly more, but I automatically don't have shipping and I get it faster, and then I take off my Prime and I go into the other one, and by the time I check out, it's more than the Prime amount, then even if the prime amount was slightly higher, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with this kind of stuff, is what I'm saying.
Okay. But like in short though, like really what you're paying for, you're paying them to not charge you more.
They wouldn't be in my example. I would still be getting charged less.
Yeah, what she's saying is in the situation where the price difference is small,
Mhm.
she's saving more from the membership than she's
Oh.
losing in the price hike.
Yeah. No, I get that part. I'm just addressing the principle of it, right? Like if it's supposed to give you like actual free shipping, like regardless of the cost, like how much you're gonna save, right? But think about how much more you'll save, right? By
But
just not paying
that's the
more.
thing, though, right? Prime
Yeah.
membership isn't just free shipping or free expedited shipping or anything like that, right? Like
Yeah,
they
that's
have
the Amazon Prime,
services.
the Prime video too. That's what I like
Yeah.
about Amazon Prime.
They also it
Yeah.
also
Yeah, but
it
just
goes
ignore
for
all of that stuff. Ignore I can understand like from a like there is value in convenience. I totally
Yes.
understand that part, right? What I'm saying is in terms of the mechanics, like the practice of it, right? What you said, sir?
There's no value. Convenience means cost more. There's less value.
Did I just
not
trigger you, bro?
not
Yeah,
just
I'm not
cost
sure.
more, but you get worse stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pixie, I'm not sure whether you're looking at the chat, but Clockwork
No,
Rex.
you're right. Because value is relative. It's okay to say that there's value in convenience. That's
Are you
why it
channeling
costs
Leo?
no,
Yeah.
no. That's why it costs more. But I just want we need to get back to video. But
Okay, let's get
this isn't like the death of capitalism. This is an idiot tax.
this is an idiot.
This is what happens when you spend money up front on things that you don't know.
Yep.
That's why
All right.
subprime mortgages went the way they did. Because people invested money in things that they didn't know.
Didn't know. Yep.
Yeah. Just to
Prices-
reiterate, I in no way think that this business is ethical. I don't love them. I'm just saying, like, and they obviously take it too far in these examples. I'm just saying there are small examples I would understand.
You know, Amazon is kind of like that toxic girlfriend they have a lot of fun with, and she does a lot of stuff to like make you like happy and convenient, but you know she's all kinds of like fucked up, and you're like, shit, man. You know she's gonna be, cheating on you every now and then, but everything else is just so much more convenient, man. And, and you know
Yeah.
in the long run you're gonna be screwed probably, but you just can't help it with the conveniences that you value that she offers. All right, let's continue.
For the
Wait,
exact
one
same
second. I
products
have
are
to address something in the chat. Although I am hosting this stream, it is technically not my stream, so I apologize, dear Rex, but I am the wrong person to ask.
I guess
Wait,
so.
I'm
Being, I guess
confused.
so. Being, you're the one. You're the one to ask.
No.
Ask what? I'm confused.
Well,
Clockwork Rex wants to join.
Like I don't have anything against Clockwork, but we're already talking enough that it's took us about an hour and a half to go through 14 minutes.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. We'll continue as is for now.
I mean, if need be, I can leave and he can come on, but whatever. Just continue, I guess.
It's up to you. If you want to, fall on your sword for Clockwork, you can be my guest. I don't have a problem with Clockwork comes up, but Serv does make a good point about the timing stuff.
Yeah, like the people in here literally probably need to talk less.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I already talked.
Damn, sir, why you gotta call me out like that, bro?
Hey, I was doing it too. The last 10 things I said, I was like, this is way off topic.
Yeah, right? All
But
right,
I
let's
like
see.
rabbit trails. I'm sorry.
higher for Amazon Prime subscribers. Does that sound like free market capitalism to you? Walmart had to resort to emulating Amazon's business model in an attempt to keep up. A decade ago, Amazon had surpassed Walmart's market cap, despite Walmart having over 10,000 massive theme park-sized stores worldwide. Walmart is far from the only company trying to mimic Amazon's growth and choke point strategy, and that's a vast understatement, as fast scaling and blitz scaling has become a normal game plan for startups. The definitions vary a little bit, but fast scaling generally means to prioritize growth initially with an open-ended plan to make a profit later. So for example, if I wanted to fast scale a lemonade stand, I would make a pitch deck for venture capital investors that proposed selling lemonade at 50% of what it costs for me to make it. This would grow my customer base significantly and starve out the neighborhood children who I'd be competing with. And then once I disrupted the lemonade market successfully, I'd work out a volume deal with lemon plantations and lower my costs while slowly raising prices for the customers so a profit could be realized. Blitzscaling, on the other hand, is a lot more reckless and assertive. My VC proposal would be to sell lemonade at half the cost, but buy out all of the neighborhood children for their stands. And then I'd buy some lemon plantations and I'd pay $100 million to have the local football stadium renamed Ben's Lemonade Stadium, and every person in attendance would be given free lemonade if they downloaded my app. You may be asking how on earth that would ever make a profit, but we're going to figure that part out when we've dominated 80 to 90% of the lemonade market and have millions of lemonade drinkers. Right now, we just need to concentrate on disrupting.
What you do is that you raise the price over time. That's a prediction on my part, but yeah.
Probably still sounds like a terrible investment, but if you buy into the initial seed round of the investment, you'll have the opportunity to sell that equity at a premium in a Series A or Series B, or even better, during an IPO launch when the company enters the stock market valued at, $15 billion. To investors in this stage, it's much less about profit and more about a lucrative and risky game of hot potato. An excellent example that we're all familiar with is Uber. Here's the original pitch deck proposing the disruption of the taxi cab industry. It's nearly delusional, claiming that a city's medallion system for cabs is a monopoly and that licensed cab drivers paying for the medallions have no accountability. In the future, digital taxi cab hailing can make, lifting up your hand unnecessary. And when they say luxury, they mean prestigious vehicles like used Priuses. And these Priuses driven by non-employees who sign up can be used to drop your kids off at school or transport the elderly. Uber has had over 25 rounds of funding that it has used to raw dog its way into the cab economy and pay for everything from lobbying local governments to settling hundreds of lawsuits. Naturally, once the traditional cab industry was more or less destroyed, the prices got jacked way up. And between 2018 and 2021, the average price for an Uber ride rose 92%. Those early pre-seed investors who unloaded equity when the company went public will obviously never have to work again. Public investors did not fare so well, and the great Uber IPO launch crash shit show made some of us think that maybe finally people are learning not to be bullish about companies that have an annual operating income of negative billions of dollars. And despite this, by 2019, the American stock market gained an impressive 30%. We're back, baby.
Okay. What do you guys think? Pixie Dust?
How is Uber? Well, how is Uber still in business if they're making it a negative? Or did I just that part?
They collected a bunch of money from investors, and then they sold off a bunch of stock real quick to people that thought it was going to do good. And so they're getting money by other means, waiting for everyone else to go out of business.
Yeah, so they can be a monopoly
well.
pretty much. So,
Well.
guys, what about his assessment, guys? Do you think it's bullshit, or is there some pixie dust in there?
No, I think it was fine. I just don't see how any of it's capitalism.
Yeah.
Okay. What
Well,
about
I
you?
mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm the same. I just feel like we took a wrong turn somewhere. Like I'm talking to my stone friend in a cafe. We had a topic, but we went down too many rabbit trails.
Okay, so he's on a rabbit trail right now. So let's continue and see what he says, because he brought up a new deal.
Yeah. Okay. I don't. It seems like the trend so far has been short-sighted people get hurt, therefore capitalism failed. I think that's the equation I'm seeing in his video.
You know what, sir? I'll do you one better. He's one of those short-sighted people that got hurt. That's why he's making this video.
Have you seen his
I
studio?
wouldn't say
No,
that.
no, he's fine.
Yeah, he's doing. It looks like he's doing pretty good. All right, so let's just end out the chapter and see go from there.
While COVID is a hot topic for debate these days between scientists and cult members, let's try and remember how utterly terrifying 2020 actually was for us. The economy obviously screeched to a halt, and many industries have still and probably never will fully recover as society was forced to change their economic habits. And while the stock market initially crashed in 2020, within 1 year, it had risen to over 30% of its pre-pandemic levels, despite the economic apocalypse happening around the world. This is because on March 23rd, 2020, the Federal Reserve announced that it would be launching a bunch of new programs like the Primary Corporate Credit Facility, which would buy new corporate bonds, and other programs that would buy existing corporate bonds, mortgage-backed securities, and asset-backed securities filled with student, car, credit card, and business loan.
Hold on. So corporations can sell bonds to the government?
Someone can sell any bond to anything. Because a
I
bond
didn't know
isn't
that was a
ownership.
thing.
Yeah, a bond isn't ownership. It's just I mean, it's like a promissory note. You're just do this thing for me, right? Then you'll make a profit from it, essentially.
Okay. I didn't even know for one, I didn't even know that the government actually buys bonds, and I didn't know that corporations offer bonds for sale.
Well, they set things up to buy bonds. It's not
Ah,
it's not like the treasury's going out and buying bonds.
okay, that's fair. All right.
We'll talk after this sometime. We'll talk about the government psyop about dairy.
Yeah.
Oh
All
boy.
right.
The federal fund effective interest rate dropped to 0.05%. And all of this was before any person or local government received so much as a dime in relief. The following month, the CARES Act was announced, which was a free $1,200 check sent out to every American making
I
under
got one.
$75,000 a year, regardless of their circumstances, with no questions asked on how or where it would be spent. This would be the first of 3 such checks that American citizens received, with a federal tab totaling $814 billion. And for those of my viewers who have been longing for an explanation for the massive increase in hammock sales that year, now you have your answer. These stimulus checks were just a tiny sliver of the overall $5 trillion that the American government spent on subsidizing the economy. And you would be right in assuming that the list of recipients was outrageous. Airlines received more money than SNAP or food assistance programs. Payroll tax exemptions got more than housing programs and farmers combined. Massive loans and grants were given to the likes of Kanye, P. Diddy, Jared Kushner, the Church of Scientology. But more importantly, for the purposes of this video, a huge portion of that money went to fintech lenders, investment firms, and venture capital groups like Andreessen Horowitz, which was immediately repurposed into investments into a new, rapidly growing type of economy that some economists refer to as
Thing again. Post-capitalism. What the
Okay.
fuck? That doesn't
Okay.
make
So hear me out, right? So so capitalism is the mechanism, right, by which we do business, right? All right.
Rules.
Rules. You said rules or
Rules.
okay, okay. So we use the rules of capitalism, right? Now would you agree that do you have a Darwinian view of capitalism where when I say Darwinian view, I mean like, let companies, live and die on their own merits instead of, the government bailing them out. Whereas because like the smaller businesses and regular everyday folk, right? They they are, their financial decisions, their participation in capitalism, right? That basically the the overall effects affects them. They get like a tiny amount of money, right? But the corporations get way more, even way more than government programs are supposed to help people. So isn't that basically the government saying, hey, you know, we're not going to let this be a situation where we're going to let companies die for making shit decisions. We're going to bail out the companies more because they're more important for maintaining the society versus the people.
Yeah,
That's
but
my thoughts on it.
if they still keep making
So,
shitty decisions, then
well,
I,
well,
I don't know.
well.
Go ahead.
My ultimate point is that you have one group that just knows better because they're in the profession of taking advantage of the rules that govern the marketplace, right?
No, you usually have a whole group of people who have a lot of insider trading knowledge.
Hey, wait.
Yeah.
So, oh,
Let me just land the plane real quick. So you have people who 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 know better. Let's just say simple. Like they know better and they're in a position to be able to take the the insane amount of funds that they are receiving to not only survive but to grow even more, right? So the way how I look at it is that the government decides to usurp the people, right, in their voting process, right? Because if people are supposed to vote with their money, right, and corporations are supposed to live and die based on people's vote, right? Isn't it a situation where by nature of the government intervening, right, aren't they going against capitalism at that point?
no, they're not
Pixie
going to get
dust or
capitalism.
bullshit? I call bullshit on the government.
Oh, well,
Mm,
oh my god, I'm going to disagree with you about as hard as you could possibly disagree with.
Okay.
But
Okay.
so the whole it comes back to corporations in the form that they are currently are an existential threat. The reason why the government response was actually almost perfect to the situation that existed. There was a bunch of stuff that could have been done so that situation wouldn't have existed, but that you don't get to go back in time,
Yeah.
right? So what for example, for if you let big chunks of the economy die, then they're just gone, right? You start with nothing and they have to rebuild the whole thing all over again. So people hear, oh, airlines got trillions of dollars, or I guess hundreds of billions of dollars. Well, airlines got hundreds of billions of dollars because no one was going to fly. And then what happens 4 years down the road when no one flies? You come out of the situation like COVID's over, and now there's no airlines. They're just gone. So then no, those people don't have a job. Shipping's more expensive. Like all these bad down the road things happen. So you just give the airlines money. So the airlines exist when the whole thing's over with.
But
But
why
you know,
not give them loans and
well
have them pay?
they did give some loans, but they mostly just gave them money. But there's no, if you give them loans and they have to pay those loans back, then when it's all over with, the price of flying and shipping just skyrocket because
But didn't that happen
they'll have to pay the
regardless?
loan.
But that happened regardless, right?
No, no, not really. It did go back up because now there are more people flying. The demand went up,
I was
but
gonna say it
it
was
wouldn't
cheaper
have
during
been.
the pandemic.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad. Well, it wasn't nearly as bad as it would have been.
Okay, I get your point. I'll
Or
stew on it
part
a
of the
little bit
pandemic.
more.
But think about it. So grocery stores weren't given money by the government, and they weren't given money by the government because people still had to buy groceries. So what they did is, hey, we have this system called well, it's not called food stamps anymore, but we have a food stamp system. Hey, everyone that lost your job, get food stamps. Hey, everyone that's on food stamps, here you go. Here's a few extra $100 a month of food stamps. And it was literally a few extra $100. It wasn't like a small amount, right? So then gave people money, like, along with those checks, those stimulus checks that they talked about. We just gave
Yeah,
people
yeah.
money. So the people that existed could go spend that money in the businesses that would still be around and operating during COVID. And then all the businesses that wouldn't have been around anymore after COVID, if we didn't give them money, we just gave them money. Right? We maximized the situation after COVID.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Pixie? I do want to so in terms of what he's conveying right here, because he's going to move on to the part that probably triggered you the most when you were kind of hovering over the thing. Do you call his presentation, like what he's led up to so far, do you call it? You know, do you smell bullshit or do you smell pixie dust? Sir.
Oh, I thought you said Pix.
Yeah, I thought you were going to tell you it said Pixie.
He may have, but at the
Yeah.
point where he said hovering, we should have all picked up that was Serb.
Kind of. I'm going to say it's mostly bullshit, but not entirely. He's framing the situation as in, hey, why didn't poor people get more money? Essentially, why did we give all this money to these businesses, these evil corporations? And it's the framing is just terrible.
Oh, I search it.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with. Yeah, I agree
so you're
with that.
50-50 basically on, like, the presentation isn't bad, but its framing is
Yeah, he took some facts and then framed them in the way that people that are already predisposed to not liking corporations would go, yeah, like that.
like what he did with me. Damn
Yeah.
it, he manipulated me. What are your thoughts, Pixie? Pixie dust or bullshit? What do you smell?
You know, it's hard because, like I said, it's like I think he way oversimplifies things, and I think he has a tendency to get off track a lot, which is fine. I'm not complaining, but it's one of those where he gets close, and then I'm like, wait, what happened? You know?
Okay, that's fair. So you're like in the middle, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Midnight? You in the middle?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. All right. Now for the interesting part. Now he's made a build up, right? And now he's going to describe what is post-capitalism in light of the previous examples that he's given. So he's laid out his, his two premises, right? This is his third premise, right? And this is going to be, his conclusion, these last two sections. All right, let's go.
To help properly explain post-capitalism, I need to remind you of the utter absurdity of just having $1 billion. Not only is it impossible to spend on even the most lavish things that you would desire, but it's also very much not like having a garage full of cash. For example, if Elon Musk, with his value of $450 billion at the time of me recording this, if he negotiated a deal to buy South Africa with its total gross domestic product valued at $381 billion, he wouldn't be able to afford it due to the value of his holdings dropping significantly as he liquidated the equity. If 13% of Tesla's shares immediately went for public sale, it would create an enormous surplus and the company's value would crash. All net worth does is obfuscate things. Cash is only powerful when you're broke, and it's only valuable when you need or want something that you otherwise couldn't get.
All right, explain that, sir.
Cash is only powerful when you're broke. I smell bullshit.
I think he was trying to explain what he meant.
Yeah, so the way I interpret it is, given his example, right? It's not like Elon Musk has hundreds of billions in cash.
Yep.
Right. Elon Musk probably only has, he's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, but he might maybe have $500 million in cash.
That's what I was saying earlier. We say that they have billions, but how much of that billions is leveraged? And when they try to access it, they're actually decreasing not only their own net worth, but their future net worth.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you go back and like look at what Elon Musk did to get Twitter, Elon Musk didn't get a bunch of his cash together and buy Twitter. What Elon Musk did is leverage his relationships with investors and then leveraged his business and property and bought Twitter. He didn't need his cash. I think that's what he's getting at. That
Yeah.
people are worried about cash when they own nothing and money's the only thing they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we need cash, right? We need cash. We need to pay all of this stuff. But when you're up at the top, you leverage the already leveraged cash that you can't really access without hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
These people avoid getting paid because if they get
Yep.
paid, they get taxed. So what they do is
Yep.
they have all these ways of pushing money through things from one business to another business to a holding company, and they cycle it around and leverage it on things. And they own it, but it never actually comes back to them in a form that they get taxed on.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
genius, honestly.
isn't that one of the reason a lot of them will take out like these insane loans? Because like the loans that you take out aren't taxed, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
I
you
mean,
can just like live off the
it's
loan.
classic property investment, like in the
Yeah.
U.S. So someone goes, a person that's really actually that has a lot of money, they're looking for an easy investment. What they do is they go buy an apartment building, right? But they buy it with a loan. So then they can write the payments on the loan off. And then they can write, I think it's 10% now or 5% or something. Every year they can write off like a loss in value on the building. Because the building needs maintenance or whatever.
Yeah.
They can write off way more than it
Way
actually drops
more.
in value. And that's why they do it. So they end up with now they have a building that they can collect rent on, but they don't get the rent. Right, the place that the place that gave the loan collects the rent. They just get to write everything off, and in the end, they'll write 10 times as much off as they leveraged.
Exactly.
And then when
That's
they're
what they
done,
do in
they
real
just sell
estate.
that building to someone else.
Yep. That's what they do in real estate. All right, let's go.
It without cash. What I instead want my viewers to be concerned with is your personal levels of power or control over the things that you earn, consume, and trade. In 1996, the US stock market had around 8,000 companies listed. And since then, our economy has grown by over $25 trillion. And now our stock market boasts nearly 4,000 companies. In that same period of time, the number of listed companies around the world went from around 24,000 to 51,000. So what is happening here? Why would our variety of public securities drop by 50% while the rest of the world's doubled?
We'll pause a second. He's going to mention something that is not incorrect, probably, but he's going to leave out a big thing. Is that over that time period, our stock market has increased the value your stock has to have to be listed.
Be listed.
So some of it is that, but I don't think he's going to mention that.
All right, let's see what he says.
The term private equity means more or less what you would expect it to mean. These days, it's usually a larger company or firm that buys smaller companies and either transforms them from public companies to private companies or just keeps them as private companies, as opposed to a publicly traded company that has a lot more obligations with the Securities and Exchange Commission. In the 1990s, it was estimated that about 2% of the businesses in the US were owned by private equity. And that number has since grown to over 25%. And this includes everything from chemical companies to farms to vets to grocery store chains to food delivery apps to gyms to medical facilities to drug companies. And many of these related businesses are owned by the same investment firms or their partners, which sets the stage for an entire gallery of anti-competitive business practices and tax shielding using tactics like dividend recapitalization. In fact, this is almost unnecessary these days, as a newer trend is private equity firms literally giving one of their portfolio companies a value and then selling it to themselves. But the classic private equity business model is borrowing and raising as much capital as possible to buy and sell companies at a profit. And the faster this process is done, the better, as this beckons the velocity of money demonstration that I gave you earlier in this video. You can argue that these are just complex capitalist maneuvers, or perhaps late-stage capitalism, a term that's been used since Werner Sombart coined it in 1928. But even that is not happening anymore. The velocity of these transactions is slowing down significantly, and the average private equity holding time is the longest that it's been in 20 years. The COVID stimulus and the market effect from it led to an enormous boost of acquisitions in 2020. And even though we're now past the median average private equity holding period of 3 to 5 years, exits have been stagnant. What's more alarming is that in 2020, many workers proved to corporations that they don't need to come into the office at all, which also proves to corporations that many of them can be replaced by labor by anybody in the developing world who speaks English. That is a
Okay. What do you guys think so far? Middle of the section. Is he on point? Is he talking bullshit? Or there's some pixie dust in there?
He's fairly on point. He's not mentioning that one of the this is happening in other countries outside the West. So when he listed that amount of stocks listed globally, like in other places, how their stock went up, what it is outside of the West, there are less disadvantages for keeping a company public. So when these firms buy those, they just leave them public.
I see. So pixie
but-
dust.
No, yeah, Pixie Dust. But this is, he's not going to mention it, and I wish he would. We used to have laws that capped how much of any market you could own.
Oh,
We got rid of those a while back.
I didn't know that.
This is one of the reasons why we're in the situation we're in. This is why we have immortal psychopaths ever chomping up more and more of a marketplace. They can never die, and then once they have a bunch of stuff, like we talked about before, they can leverage the stuff they have to get more stuff. And all they have to do is sit around and wait for the people that don't own as much to have to exit when there's a crash, and then they just buy up because they're not going to run out of money.
Yeah. I did notice that. What are your thoughts, Bitsy? Is it some bullshit? There's some pixie dust.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, Serb pretty much said it. Like, I don't know that I can disagree with what Serb said right there.
Okay. What about you, Midnight?
Yeah, pretty much in agreement.
Okay. All right. So let's continue.
private equity investors' wet dream. So what gives? Does nobody like money anymore? The point of all of this maneuvering is decreasingly about turning a profit and increasingly about transitioning to a rent-based economy that hedges inflation. Right after the 2008 financial crisis, investment firms started betting big on farmland, typically hiring local farmers to manage them, but more frequently offering leaseback programs where the farmer continues working but rents the land, ultimately losing control over their working budget and circumstances. Otherwise, since then, and especially since 2020, in almost all cases, investment is not attracted to innovation or profitability, but to business models that act as a middleman offering subscriptions to products or services you would otherwise buy directly.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
So the corporations are the lords, we're the serfs, and they own the land. In the farmer's perspective.
They're slowly becoming more and more like lords. Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
For example, software, movies, video games, parcel, pizza delivery, headphones, cell phones, groceries, clothing, underwear, heated car seats, pregnancy. A rent-based economy has always been present in real estate, but if you're an American homeowner, then you've probably had an annoying amount of investment groups asking if you'd like to sell your house. And it's not unusual for those investment groups to pay over market value for single-family homes.
One of the companies that I still kind of do work with them. That's pretty much what they do. They basically, like, instead of using people, they're using computers to do a lot of that footwork. The only parts where people will come in is when they have to do like certain inspections and to make sure certain things are in place. But yeah, this is the thing.
Well, I just want, cause he mentioned that when I don't know how to put it. I don't want to repeat exactly what he said, but businesses are becoming more and more about becoming the middleman, where they're selling you subscriptions for things that you otherwise would have bought directly.
Yeah, like your movies and
Factor.
your music. Yeah,
Oof,
all of that.
Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
No,
It also shouldn't
not
surprise.
just that, all of it. All
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Used to, you would buy from the farmer or the tailor or the seamstress, right? Like now you buy your food, and you can buy your food and your clothes in the same place.
Yep.
Seriously though. Seriously though, don't buy Factor. Please don't buy Factor.
Okay. Okay.
What, factor of brand?
Yeah, they
Right.
make TV dinners.
Oh,
Yeah.
And instead of you going to the grocery store and buying a TV dinner, what they do is they make their own TV dinners. And then they spend
oh,
$1
right.
shipping it
Yeah,
to you, and then they charge an extra $5 per TV dinner
yeah.
to get it from them.
I guess you would say the same thing about Blue Apron, right? It's not just factors. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot
Yeah.
of things do that. Like, hey, you know what? You want food? Order.
Oh,
I can believe
Blue Apron's worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way worse. Because what they're doing is they're selling you a TV dinner that you have to put together.
That you have to put together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
it's
much.
crazy. Well, but again, right? There is like they know there's value in convenience because a lot of people, right? They're either super introverted or they're super lazy to go to the store to pick up their own shit,
Yeah.
right?
I think
So
we
they
should
can
take
cook.
away a lot of conveniences.
Oh, you know,
And
they can't drive.
not just like going to the store and stuff. Like I think we should stop. I think we're focusing on recycling in the wrong way. Okay? Nobody's going to properly dispose of their plastic fucking milk jug. We've proven this 6,000 goddamn times, okay? I think we should go back to having milkmen, or at least have like disposable containers where I can go into the store and I can buy the amount of cereal I want, and I can buy the amount of milk I want, and fuck all this prepackaged bullshit.
I don't think the suburban men will appreciate the comeback of the milkman. I'm just saying. I'm kidding.
I
I'm
said,
kidding.
or you could just go into the store and fill up your like little glass milk jug, or return it and get another one, right? But like, why do we need like disposable plastic everything of everything of everything?
Nah, Mixie, you missed the joke, man. Damn it.
We
No, I
No,
get
I
it.
got,
And
I got.
all the you, but the truth is,
Milkman babies.
it never really went away.
Yeah, I get
But if I want to be real, it never really went away, right? Because the milkman became the mailman, and the mailman became the UPS guy, and this way they just have more competition.
There's more competition in that market.
can I throw a red pill about recycling in here because Pitchy mentioned recycling?
Okay.
Yeah.
If you go look up where the recycling's where most of the recycling is happening in the world, like the actual work being done, over the years it changes from country to country. By the way, most of it's not done in the United States anymore.
Yeah.
It switches from country to country because there's no way to recycle at a profit. So things are being recycled in the place where the government of that place is subsidizing it. We stopped subsidizing it, so then we outsourced it to Indonesia, and then they outsourced it to India, and then they outsourced it to like Milan, and they outsourced it like all. It's just countries
Okay, just a bunch of
taking turns.
outsourcing. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's just countries taking turns spending money on recycling, and then they realize, wait, all this does is cost us money, and then they stop it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and it's never going to change anything. So that's the wrong kind of recycling, right? We don't need to be recycling materials over and over and over. We just need to have materials that we keep and use over and over and over.
Well, there's two things that you can be recycled at a profit: hard plastic caps and aluminum cans.
Do you think that I'm not going to add to this because Serb called me out earlier. Are we done? Can we move on?
Yeah. Sorry.
We know that there are some of us that enjoys rabbit trails more so than others, and I'm enjoying it too myself. So let me be disciplined here.
you to hear that homeownership has been declining, particularly for millennials, with nearly 2 out of 3 people under the age of 40 being renters. Many argue that this is primarily due to inflation and sluggish wage increases, but the cost to income ratio has risen for renters and dropped for homeowners. The wealth gap between renters and homeowners has widened by over 50% in the last decade. In lower and middle class households, white people are nearly 2 times more likely to be homeowners than people of color, meaning that younger minority groups are likely to be increasingly disproportionately punished in the future when you take all of this data into consideration. Profit and even money itself is only really valuable when it buys power. And if a societal system can be engineered to gain power without profit or money, capitalism begins to exist as something to exploit within that system under its umbrella. It sounds hyperbolic, but it needs to be said a lot more often. Most of us do not realize that we are in a constant battle with billionaires who don't want us to own things, but rent them. And when we don't own things, we lose control over our own budgets, lives, decisions, and ultimately our own destinies. Here's a pertinent example. Did somebody that you know send you a link to this video, or did you type in Ben Jordan new video and find it that way? Or was it recommended to you by an algorithm? Or
By an algorithm.
was it placed on your sidebar? Or did it autoplay when another video ended? This next and final chapter is very much about the type of transaction that you and I are having right now. Me working without benefits, guaranteed pay, or protections to make something to use as bait to get you to either watch targeted advertisements or pay $14 a month without even being offered a chance to indefinitely play the video file offline on your own device. And while you
Yep, I have YouTube Premium. It's calling me out. I hate ads that much.
Yeah, dude, I know ads are fucking annoying. Okay, it's especially when they play over a live stream. Like I get videos like this,
How
but
dare
live
you?
streams, like
So hear me out.
Don't you
Hear me
know
out.
you're the product? How dare you?
I know I'm the product.
Yeah, right?
I know I am. Okay,
Right?
I got the train for 10 years ago.
It's funny because like outside of hating ads, right? Like the knowledge of knowing that the content creators do get some money, right? Like that makes me feel a little bit better about about using YouTube Premium, and not, using these add-ons or whatever for apps, because I absolutely can, right, and enjoy YouTube without paying, without
Yeah.
the ads for free. But these people put a lot of time and effort sometimes in their stuff, and I'm fine with, paying a little bit so they can get some money from the work that they put in, if they're getting any money from it. So that's kind of my perspective on that. Now, there's been rumors about, well, not rumors, in some locations, the YouTube Premium pricing has gone up. But I will say, if it goes up to like $20 or anything like that, I'm gonna stop using YouTube Premium. Even if they introduce a YouTube Premium
See,
Lite.
I won't. But that's only because like I get a bundle deal, and so it counts for like me and Super Munchkin
You
and
get a
other
bundle
stuff.
deal? What the?
Yeah,
Yo, bro, you gotta give me that link
it's
up
a family
after
thing.
the stream.
It's like a family thing instead of an individual thing.
Well,
I
we need to
swear
talk
I'm
after
related to
stream.
the black guy on the other side of the country. I swear.
Wait,
What you
repeat that.
said?
What did you say?
I was just saying, Pixie's just like, I swear, YouTube, I'm related to the black guy on the other side of the country.
Pixie, we gotta have a conversation about this YouTube private. We're gonna talk about some
Oh God.
possible investments, wink wink, and how we all can benefit from the value of YouTube Premium. Let's so he's
Odin,
almost, huh?
Odin down.
So his presentation is almost over. So let's continue once he's moved on to the next chapter, which is basically his conclusion, right? I think both of them is his conclusion based on how he presented it. Then you guys can let me know what you guys think.
you do that, your every move is being harvested for data to empower the company. Let's take a look at this definition again and let me know how well it describes our little transaction here. Capitalism is
Yes, sir. We know you kind of disagree with
Yeah.
the definition. We don't have to go there. Just humor him for the sake of this conversation.
I just wish he opened up a textbook
Okay, that's
or
fair.
something. Just
Okay, that's fair.
is formally described as an economic system in which individuals and private parties control the means of production, and profits are the key driver of economic activity.
Okay, outside of being triggered by that, do you guys call bullshit, or is there some pixie dust in there?
I mean, he was, he was right that nowadays corporations own us in a sense that, they don't really own anything. So there's that.
Yeah.
Tamara is definitely pixie dust. I would say maybe 90.
yeah, I
Okay.
agree. I agree. The current marketplace in America, in some situations, seems to not advantage poor people. I agree with him.
Okay. What about you, Pixie? You're gonna stick up for your corporate overlords or your corporate buddies?
Do you mean do I think we operate as a corporate oligarchy? Yes, I do.
Well, more so like his presentation for this particular chapter. Do you think he's on point, or is he spewing bullshit?
I mean, it's again, I don't. It's not that I disagree with some of the things he's saying. I'm just really confused about why government policy equals capitalism.
Well, I think he's talking about. I called it the mechanics. Sir corrected me and says the rules of capitalism, right? And how the rules is not benefiting one aspect of society, and this in this particular
See, I don't think he seems, but I don't think that
see,
that would even be a correct or could be a correct argument. I think you could argue that we're not doing capitalism, but I don't think you can say we're not doing capitalism right, therefore capitalism is bad. That just doesn't make sense to me.
So
yeah, this is why this is he's that's why he calls this one post-capitalism, because as far as he's concerned, everything that happens up to this point, right, at least in in history, finance history, right, like our market history, right, this is where capitalism ended, and like this is this is the interim before the next phase
see,
of the market, basically.
I, I'm glad you said that. I forgot that this was all in the context of the term post-capitalism. I'm going to call super bullshit because
Okay, we change that.
yeah. Well, post-capitalism, because he didn't really talk about post-capitalism. All the stuff he talked about was just how the market's working.
It's not
Yeah,
holistic.
he's
Yeah.
he's describing the market, right? And he's saying, hey, listen, the way how the market is operating right now is not indicative of the rules that describe what capitalism is, right?
Yeah.
So that's why this section, right? He called it post-capitalism. So my question is, does his assessment live up to that to the claim that's being made?
Well, there's
Not
like
yet.
there's a switch going
Okay.
on, right? Because
Okay.
he's using the term post-capitalism, and he says economists use this term, or some economists started using this term,
Mhm.
right? And what he said after that, as in the context of post-capitalism, is not what they say. So that's why I'm calling bullshit. He uses them as an authority, and then says all this stuff that they don't say is also this, right?
Okay.
Post-capitalism is just a code word for communism. I'm not joking. You just go to Google and type in what is post-capitalism, and you will find a definition that you will read and go, yeah, that's kind of what Marx had in mind.
So isn't it a situation because sure you can agree from it you can disagree based on like merits, but if it's just a word that describing um the phenomena that we're experiencing, who cares? If you call it tomato sauce, that doesn't change what he's describing, right? So the question is he describing what is indicative of the rules of capitalism changing, right? Or well, let me re-ask the question. I don't think I asked that correctly. Is what he's describing a altered version of the rules of what makes up capitalism?
No,
Okay. So
not even
it's
by
bullshit.
his definition.
Okay.
Right. You understand why I corrected you when you said mechanisms? I said rules.
That rules. Yes. Yeah.
Because rules don't take actions. Mechanisms take actions. Right. The banking system takes actions. Right. The farmers take actions. The customers take actions. The business take actions. The rules are just rules saying this is what you can or can't do.
Okay. So if it's a situation where where the majority of the parties are no longer participating based on the rules, right? Does it mean does it I understand what you're saying, like we have to separate the two. Like capitalism is not the bank, it's not the business owner, it's not the corporation. Like I totally understand that, right? Um, but who sets the rules at the same time, right? The rules are agreed upon by the people that participate under those
No,
specific
no, no. See,
rules,
but that's
right?
that's what I'm saying. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like people create policy to act within a system or to subvert a system. People create laws that act within a system or that subvert a system. But you can't say we're doing the system wrong, so the system sucks,
Yeah.
right?
He hasn't made a single argument against the rules listed in a textbook of what capitalism is or the rules he's listing for what he's saying capitalism is. Every single argument he's making in this video, either explicitly or implicitly, is we need more rules. You can have more
Okay.
rules and still be capitalist, right? Because
Mhm.
capitalism is just those two rules. You can add 10 more rules. You can add 20 more rules. As long as you still have those two rules, you're still capitalist. That's why I was saying he's not saying capitalism's dying. He's not making an argument against capitalism. He's talking about a bunch of other things. Even under his own definition, he's talking about a bunch of other things.
Yeah, he's just saying we're doing capitalism wrong. And what's
Okay.
that? What and yeah. That's what
Okay.
I've gotten out of it is that
So
he thinks we're doing it wrong.
okay. So Pixie, I'm assuming you're gonna stick to your Pixie Dust in terms of what he's trying to convey, because I already get that Service definitely not gonna change his mind on his
Like, okay,
thing.
I think, like I said, I think it's like he's not wrong on some things, and on some things where I do think he's wrong, it's some of those moments are moments where I was like, oh, but you're so close, right? But I just feel like we took some wrong turns and we oversimplified things to the extent that we're like conflating two completely different, like we're on a topic right now that is not the topic that was brought to the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Um, but okay, you can explain the rules, right? But how can you tell whether or not the rules are working outside of the behaviors of the participants that are supposed to be following the rules?
Okay. Okay, let me put it this way. There's another reason I don't like the name socialism attached to governments is because of its connotation despite its wide use, right?
Yeah.
You can have a socialist republic, a socialist democracy, a socialist communist state, right? Like socialism is this separate thing that you can attach to almost anything, right? And make it
Yeah.
sound, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that in the same way, right? Like he's you can be a capitalist with a laissez-faire market. You can be a capitalist with a heavily regulated market. You can be a capitalist with an over-regulated market, right? You can have all these things, and you can say, I don't think we're doing capitalism right, and that's fine. You can argue about how to do capitalism, but I think it's an odd sort of conflation to say, I don't like the way we're doing capitalism. Capitalism is bad.
Okay. So to be fair, I don't think he's necessarily saying capitalism is bad. I think what he's probably looking at it as it's like, okay, um, some people aren't participating properly, um, and it's screwing it up for everyone else. That's if I were to kind of surmise this specific chapter, that's
So he
my
wants to
impression of it.
reform capitalism, and he doesn't think there's the death of capitalism.
Well, he hasn't said anything yet about what he would like to do. But
Well,
just
okay.
just one more thing, sir. So are you gonna switch? Are you gonna go to a mid on this, or are you gonna do Pixie Dust or
I'm
bullshit?
kind of mid right
Mid?
now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. All right, go ahead, sir.
I want to say, uh, let's say socialism, communism, right, is a critique of one specific rule of capitalism, and that is anyone can own private property. Right? That all the arguments that communists and socialism have stem from that a criticism of that rule. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
That's what post-capitalism does. And I am
yeah,
almost positive that's exactly what he's going to do. He is going to talk about the death of capitalism. The
yeah,
issue I have is he spent this whole video talking about bad things or things that are at least ethically dubious
ethically dubious.
that
Yeah.
have nothing to do with those two rules. And now he's going to try and make an argument probably that says we need to change one of those rules.
See, that's interesting because like the ownership of property, right? He didn't have that in his definition, right? And it's
Right?
it and I do find it strange because this is part of the reason why I asked you guys to go over this particular video because I thought it was like maybe it was just me that like kind of noticed this where it's like okay he didn't add the part about ownership in there, right? And so in this next section, interestingly, right, he's going to go into his conclusion as to what is going to be the I guess the ultimate result. Like it's not like when I say ultimate result, it's what we're trending towards right now, which is the lack of ownership of stuff that we used to own. Like if I purchase a piece of software, right? Um, I own it. There was a big issue in video games recently where where companies were basically advertising as if people were buying the pieces of software, right? Only to take down the servers that it was being hosted on, or to make it not downloadable again, like stuff like that, right?
You
Well,
remember
hold,
you
hold on,
were
hold on.
okay,
Let me
okay.
finish. And so what happened is that gamers started to get upset, and people who purchased videos started to get upset, and the companies weren't telling people that all they were doing was buying a temporary license. You were not buying a copy of that piece of software. So I think it was California that forced a couple companies to change the verbiage on their thing to say, "Hey, listen, you are not purchasing this copy of this software. You are purchasing a license to use the software." So we don't own our shit anymore. Go ahead, Midnight.
I mean, did we ever own our shit?
Yes.
Well, now I was going to say that some companies even said like you will own nothing and like it. Because
You know what?
I know what
When
you're
I
talking
bought my
about.
Nintendo
Well, that was
game,
Klaus
nobody
Schwab. That
could
was
take
it.
that fucking thing away from me. All right, that
Never
was
mind.
my
Yeah.
Nintendo game.
Now, to be fair, part of the reason why companies kind of leaned over in this direction, at least in regards to software, was they didn't like the idea of pirating, basically, right? As
It
far as
still
they're concerned.
happens.
I mean, yeah, we know that, but at the end of the day, the way how they looked at it was like, hey, we're losing out on a lot of money by, through Rhapsody or LimeWire, for example, right? And they found different ways to kind of adjust and change things without letting the consumers know, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially what we're getting into right now. But all right, let's move on to the next chapter and see what he has to say.
Long before the pandemic, the foundation had already been laid for an economy that transcended goods and services. Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal, where 87 million users were psychologically profiled without consent and served political ads, was hugely associated with both the 2016 presidential election and the Brexit referendum. Many people believe, including whistleblowers who worked in the data centers, that without Cambridge Analytica, the UK would still be part of the
I would trust that guy with my data. The purple hair. No.
Yeah, he's clearly trustworthy.
European Union.
Well,
Better yet, here's a leaked debriefing slideshow from Cambridge Analytica giving themselves credit for using mined personal data in combination with misinformation campaigns to win an election. As Americans were concerned and distracted by claims of voter fraud and hacked machines, we forgot to notice that democratic elections don't work when news and information are no longer democratized. For example, in most dictatorships, the government will have an office that permits or denies which stories can run in the newspaper. In 2025, every piece of news that the average voter sees is manipulated by a third-party aggregator. Even if you go to something like Google News and select the generalized headline areas, your feed will be different than mine. This disequilibrium.
Can we pause this? Because it's become more democratized, not less democratized.
I would argue yes and no, but go ahead. I want to hear what you guys say.
The reason why these businesses can have these campaigns where they're paying influencers and making paying for these articles and this stuff is because the cost of entry is so much lower. Right? It's a byproduct of it becoming democratized.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So there's two ways to look at it. Yes, people, the ease of entry um, allows for more participants, right? So yes, it's become more democratized, but as a result, the because anyone can say anything and no one's held to any particular standard or anything like that, right? People can post whatever they want. That includes corporations because corporations are people. And so if you're the owner of a corporation and you want to get a particular candidate elected, right? And let's say you know that a certain with all of the data you collected about all of these voters that's within that country, right? And you know that people are going to vote based off of, let's say, what they learn about a particular politician versus policy and stuff like that. You can essentially hypnotize people into voting in one direction or the other. That's what people have basically um, accused Elon Musk of doing with X. And I'm not going to lie, I've seen that on X. I mean, outside of that, X is basically like a shitty porn advertisement website that like they need to fix that. It's really, really bad. But um, I think there's two parts to this. And I think that the social media networks, they didn't, they don't have anything to any standard to in terms of like how to convey information and which information is actually valid from which is not, right? And because they're individuals and not under like, the government or whatever, like they're not held to any standard, right? They can literally post whatever they want to convince as much people of whatever they want, thus skewing the election within their own, their personal favor.
I want you to think what its definition was. Individuals and businesses or corporations. I forget. Individuals and business. Individuals. Let's go with individuals. Can own property, and the primary motivator is the profit motive. Like that was his definition.
Yeah.
What
No, no,
about
no.
all?
He didn't use property in his definition. That's what I was saying. That
Oh,
was my problem with his thing.
Well, I thought that was the first part of his definition.
Nah, he didn't include that. That's part of the reason why in the last chapter it like completely threw me off, and he had this particular thing because remember, if you're what he's leading up to is a form of like feudalistic system, right?
Well, yeah,
And
that's what communism is. It's
yeah,
feudalism without the ownership of the person.
yeah, right. That's basically what he's leading up to. Like it's I don't know. It's obvious to me, right? And so And so it's weird that he's going to make that argument, right? But didn't include the owning of property, the private owning of property in the definition that he uses.
Wait, I'm almost positive. Well, okay, the second part is the profit motive thing. What's
Yes,
the first
yeah,
part?
the profit. So actually, let's see if we can
Because I was almost
answer that.
positive it was ownership.
Here it is, right here.
Describes our little transaction here. Capitalism is formally described as an economic system in which individuals and private parties control the means of production, and profits are the key driver of economic activity.
Oh, wait
See?
a second. Well, yeah. I think go back to the definition he gives in the beginning. I think that's a different definition.
Hold on a second, because when the thing came up, there was another one up at the corner there. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, here it is up there. Now, he added private property ownership as a characteristic, but it's nowhere in the definition.
Okay. Oh, wait. What? I could swear he said ownership in the definition that he said.
Nope, never used ownership.
No, play it first. But maybe I'm hallucinating.
I think that's when he got to like feudalism and stuff.
Oh, what I don't know. Maybe I just wanted him to be right. If he doesn't have ownership of private property, then he isn't half right on the definition. And I'm gonna if I would have if I didn't make that mistake in the beginning, I would have just called him out straight up as a communist. Because that's what communists do. That's how they try to define capitalism. Because that's the type of ownership they really don't want you to be able to have.
I don't know that he's arguing against capitalism. I think he's trying to argue that we've strayed so far towards capitalism, we're gonna work ourselves into feudalism.
No, see, I think he's arguing. He's not okay. He's not literally arguing against capitalism, but he's trying to get his audience to think that he is.
Okay.
Stories can run in the newspaper. In 2025, every piece of news that the average voter sees is manipulated by a third-party aggregator. Even if you go to something like Google News and select the generalized headline areas, your feed will be different than mine. This disequilibrating of information was concerning enough when it was being done for ad revenue and profit. But now, it's about a lot more than that. Whether capitalism is healthy or unhealthy at any given point in time, it has always provided the framework for negotiation between profit and labor. In Karl Marx's critique of political economy, labor is broken into two subcategories.
Don't be triggered. Don't be triggered.
No, I was saying,
Okay.
if I didn't mishear his definition in the beginning, I would have
Yeah.
said, yeah, of course he's a communist.
Okay.
Categories. There's abstract labor, which is what I'm doing right now when making this video. I'm learning, I'm gaining experience, I'm sharing information, and overall, I'm just feeding my passion. And the other is concrete labor, which is what somebody would be doing if they were holding a boom mic over me or making me coffee. Capitalism obviously requires concrete labor, but it thrives on abstract labor as it provides organic growth. And the problem is that you can't just snap your fingers and get abstract labor. You can't even buy it because someone's passion and happiness is more valuable to them than a commodity. So corporations classically try to generate it through morale-boosting corporate programs and retreats and parties. This has been a major challenge since the Industrial Revolution, even when you're paying a competitive salary, health insurance, 401k, and bonuses. But when you hire gig workers that have no benefits, labor protections, or even guaranteed income, which, by the way, is often below minimum wage, how can you expect to extract abstract labor? And abstract labor and value is extremely high in creative industries. How can you expect musicians to, on average, spend more in fees to give you their music than you'll ever pay them in royalties? How can you expect an app or game developer to give you 30% of their income when you're not even offering support or advertisement? Or shit, how can you expect somebody to buy thousands of dollars of camera equipment to start a competitive YouTube channel? Okay, other side of the coin. Why would I?
Okay. What do you guys thought? Is he on point? Is he talking some bullshit? Is he spitting out?
I don't know. I haven't heard enough since the last stop.
Okay,
Yeah,
we can keep going.
He's kind of all over the place. Like he brings up Karl Marx, talks about labor and value, and then doesn't mention any type of labor or value that Karl Marx even talked about.
Well, he mentioned two types. He mentioned the two types of labor, right? And he spoke about the value of both of them, right? Now you have one labor, the physical labor, right? And you have, I guess, the what he calls it again? The abstract and concrete labor,
Yeah, but
right? And the value of, he talked about the value of both of them.
but Karl Marx would not prescribe any value to someone holding a microphone above your head. That's one of the main issues with his philosophy. There has to
Okay.
literally be a thing made with concrete labor for there to be value. That's
No,
why communism's that's why their economies always crash, because they don't understand how anything works.
no. I get what you're saying, right? But in our current in the current world that we live in, what he's saying is that we value both of these types of labors, right? That's why he was saying, that's why him, right? Him learning about this particular topic and being able to sit in front of a mic and stuff like that, right? Can YouTube takes advantage of that to use him to make money, and he makes money from YouTube because YouTube values his his abstract labor. He only brings up Marx to talk about who coined these two ideas in the current context.
But he didn't.
He literally just did that.
No. He said that in the video. But Karl Marx didn't talk about either of those things. Those are not terms he used. That's why I'm saying he's all over the place. He's not.
Yeah, that's right here.
For ad revenue and profit. But now it's about a lot more than that. Whether capitalism is healthy or unhealthy at any given point in time, it has always provided the framework for negotiation between profit and labor. In Karl Marx's critique of political economy, labor is broken into two subcategories. There's abstract labor, which is what I'm doing right now when making this video. I'm learning, I'm gaining experience, I'm sharing information, and overall, I'm just feeding my passion. And the other is concrete labor, which is what somebody would be doing if they were holding a boom mic over me or making me coffee. Capitalism, obviously.
Okay. He's saying those are things that Marx said.
No,
now, he could be
not.
wrong, but what you said? I interrupted you.
No, that's not how Marx breaks any of his things down in any of his. I like last year. I literally went through and read everything from Marx.
So you're saying he's spreading fake news?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
That's a more modern invention.
Okay.
But,
Let's grant. Let's not squabble over the minor details. He's explaining these two particular phenomena, and he's assigning two terms to it. Just for the sake of conversation, let's just say he's describing terms to what he is experiencing, right? Can we just do that for now?
yeah.
Okay. We know you're triggered, bro. We know you're
Sorry.
triggered.
I'm getting big sus vibes off him.
Obviously requires concrete labor, but it thrives on abstract labor as it provides organic growth. And the problem is that you can't just snap your fingers and get abstract labor. You can't even buy it because someone's passion and happiness is more valuable to them than a commodity. So corporations classically try to generate it through morale-boosting corporate programs and retreats and parties. This has been a major challenge since the Industrial Revolution, even when you're paying a competitive salary, health insurance, 401k, and bonuses. But when you hire gig workers that have no benefits, labor protections, or even guaranteed income, which, by the way, is often below minimum wage, how can you expect to extract abstract labor? And abstract labor and value is extremely high in creative industries. How can you expect musicians to, on average, spend more in fees to give you their music than you'll ever pay them in royalties? How can you expect an app or game developer to give you 30% of their income when you're not even offering support or advertisement? Or shit, how can you expect somebody to buy thousands of dollars of camera equipment to start a competitive YouTube channel? Okay, other side of the coin. Why would I, a YouTuber, take a modest salary to produce, shoot, and edit short stories for, I don't know, the New York Times, when I can have full control over my content where I'll be rewarded appropriately for all of my hard work? Or why would somebody work for a chauffeur company when they could set their own hours depending on how much money they needed in any given week? According to YouTube's 2024 Culture and Trends report, 65% of Gen Z identify themselves as a content creator. And YouTube doesn't exactly hide why this is such good news for advertisers who intend on capitalizing on this societal snowball effect. But we can assume that if and when that generation enters the labor force, they won't exactly be bringing high levels of abstract value to the car insurance claims adjuster cubicle. But this is nothing new. Long before the pandemic, the labor force participation rate had dropped significantly from its peak in 2000. And you can see the decline growing exponentially as big tech entered the economy. It obviously crashed during the pandemic, and now, even though labor force participation was at a 35-year low in 2019, we still haven't even recovered to that level. Meanwhile, in 2024, 36% of US workers were participants in the gig economy. It is projected that by 2027, that number will have grown to over half of the entire American workforce. I wonder what could possibly make everything that I told you in this chapter 100 times worse. In the late 1990s, we quickly realized how powerful marketing could be with the innocently named cookies, which simply track a user's activity with the primary goal of optimizing targeted advertising. When Facebook introduced the like button in 2009, the power of sentiment analysis was realized, and it would only be a few years before you telling your aunt that you bought a new grill would lead to you seeing ads to get you to subscribe to meat subscription services. Hey, look, there's a coupon.
That's totally true, by the way.
Yeah.
Hate that shit. Bro, just because I bought a grill, that don't mean I want to buy meat from you, bro. Stop sending me ads.
For the annual plan. Congratulations. For the next year of your life, the meat you grill will be chosen for you. It won't be graded like the meat you get from the butcher. It won't be FDA approved, and you'll pay more while a farmer on the other side of the world earns less. But it wouldn't be until the recent AI boom when sentiment analysis would become sci-fi levels of terrifying. Facebook has lost popularity while young users migrated to Instagram and TikTok. Now, to participate in your social group, you are required to create content. And when you do that, AI analyzes the sentiment of the content. And if it's not saying or showing anything that isn't of interest to the platform, for example, talking about a government coup on TikTok, then it is viewed by
That's the reason Pixie doesn't have 100 views right now in this video.
users who have shown interest in that topic. The content would then be graded by the amount of time that users would spend looking at it before moving on to the next photo or video. And the higher it scores, the more people it's shown to. And once it's graded as a useful video, it is shown to people who are most likely to feel rewarded by watching it. An algorithm priority and optimized placement in this cycle can be purchased at a premium, in which case TikTok also takes between 10 and 15% commission of a sale. So if I wanted to make some edgy, catchy t-shirt that said, I don't know, "Rip Capitalism," for example, and sell it in this vacuum of an economy that TikTok has, I'd go through a drop shipping service like Printify, who would then act as a middleman for finding a printer. And Printify, of course, offers a subscription too, and they make money from both the printers and the designers. In this cycle, abstract labor is either unpaid or paid pennies on the dollars in comparison to the wealth that their labor generated. This isn't exactly a speculation or a prophecy either. As of 2025, 1 out of 3 young people have shopped on social media in the last week. And another study of 14,000 global consumers has shown that 91% of people prefer buying cosmetics on social media. 81% of the people in that study prefer buying clothing that way, while only 57% even bother trying clothing on before purchasing them. And again, one could argue that this is merely capitalism on methamphetamines, but a store like Kohl's employs 96,000 people. Printify employs 760 people. Kohl's sales have declined for 11 consecutive quarters, and it can be expected that their payroll will shrink along with it. The reason I'm using clothing as an example here is to show you how powerful sentiment analysis is at converting consumers to this new economy. 15 years ago, if you proposed the idea that the value of a video app would be higher than, I don't know, seeing how your clothing looks or fits on you before buying it, you'd be laughed at. The majority of the income from these everyday transactions adds up and now goes to firms that were subsidized with venture capital. And I can only imagine that being an actual manufacturer is less and less desirable, which may additionally explain why labor participation is at historic lows. In the last 2 years, as AI was being shoved in my face virtually everywhere, as I'm sure you have experienced as well, my Google searches now open a sidebar telling me about my previous search that I don't have patience to sort out. Or if I want to make sure that a replacement vacuum hose works with my model of shop vac on Amazon, instead of searching through reviews and answers, I now have to talk to a bot named Rufus about it. This is happening with emails, with messaging apps, image editors, everything. I was initially really confused by this because virtually nobody likes it. It changes familiar workflows of users, which risks somebody leaving your ecosystem. And it's really expensive. Just one round of training an LLM or large language model can cost over $200 million. And that's not to mention the hugely increased processing power that needs to be done every time that you query that model. And all of this is just happening automatically just to beg us to use it. Why? The reason that so many cloud-based companies are dumping so much money and resources into pushing this technology on everyone is to capture the part of our routine that comparison shops or researches or asks for advice or arrives at a logical conclusion about something. If you become friends with ChatGPT or Gemini or Rufus or Siri, and you consult with their vast informational resources on a more personal and casual level, you're not only supplying them with the purest form of sentiment analysis, but you're helping them build a system that will further control not only your decisions on what to buy or subscribe to, but what hobby you'll take up next summer. Not only is it
Telling you guys, Guys are profit against profit.
Influencing your decision on where to buy an engagement ring or where and when to go on vacation to propose to your partner, there's nothing stopping it from influencing your decision on whether you should get married at all. It would be very naive to think of digital assistants as your assistants. They are very much not there to help you, but to help their owners. And the conclusion that most of us has is that they're there to help their owners make more money. But in the case of things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal or Twitter quite literally and intentionally becoming an interactive right-wing propaganda tool, there's a lot more to be worried about than money.
Okay, so where do you guys serve? You can go first.
I'm sitting over here foaming.
Okay, that's why I picked for you to go first.
This whole entire Karl Marx talked about abstract and concrete labor thing. It just those aren't terms he used. The hint should be that labor is literally what he said value was, right? So, but he talks about work time, right, which is abstract. That would be what in modern terms would be abstract labor. And then there's use case, the use of the thing that the labor is producing, or maybe even the use of the labor. Right, that would be the concrete labor in modern terms. Never uses those terms, and even when you translate what he said into those terms, he didn't even get that right. It's not the different kinds of jobs you're doing.
No, I mean I get that, right? But I think you didn't move past that one
No, I
part
didn't.
of it. You did not move past.
But also, oh, Dean, when he was talking about telling your grandma you brought a grill, and then all of a sudden you see advertisements for meat or something. I swear to God, every time a friend of my friend and I get into our, get in a phone call, he gets advertisements for the weirdest shit because it's like that. They definitely use your phone. You definitely use your calls to drive
Oh yeah.
drive ads. Yeah, it's fucking freaky.
I mean, this has happened to me a couple times where I'm like having a conversation about like running shoes,
yeah.
right? And I have not searched for running shoes for months. And like when I opened my phone to like just open my phone and I'm like scrolling through my home screens, right? And I
Yeah.
scroll to like the last home part of the home screen. I see a Google ad for running shoes, and I'm like, bruh, this motherfucker is listening
It's so
to,
messed up.
you know,
What's
but
even creepier?
huh?
What's even businesses based on your buying habits and your searching habits can do things like predict if you're pregnant even when you don't know.
Yeah, that thing. I remember
Right?
reading about that. I remember reading about that shit. It's like, what the fuck?
Look, and
Yeah.
look, none of this is a critique of the rules for capitalism, right?
Well, no.
This is a critique of not having a rule that says you're not allowed to be creepy.
I
I think I don't know, Pixie, you wanna go? By the way, are you gonna give us? Are you gonna call? Well, I don't think Sir paid attention to much past the Marxist.
No, I did. I did, but I just kept on going. Yeah, but this isn't actually a critique of capitalism. That's all I got. He's saying factual information as if it's something wrong with capitalism, but he's not mentioning capitalism. And then he's just continuing. Like,
Well, I think the only way, for example, capitalism can die and turn into something else is via the participants, right? If the
I don't think
participants,
it needs to die and turn into something else.
no,
you
no, no,
start changing.
I'm not saying that it needs to. I'm just saying the only way it can die is via its participants, and the participants electing willingly or unwillingly into a different form of economic or trade system.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I
what
just
he's
think a
saying,
lot of these problems aren't so much new problems as in we're dealing with them in a new way, right? I mean,
yeah,
when advertisement first became a thing, from radio to TV to all of it, right? Like they said the same thing. Oh, it's influencing everyone, and it did. My grandmother, because of advertisements, grew up in a generation that thought she needed to regularly take laxatives. I kid you not. Like, but I mean, I don't necessarily think it's new, as in it's in a new form, and I think it's always going to take the government too long to catch up to the negative effects some of these things have societally.
if they do, you
Right.
know.
So
I mean,
I'm with Serb. Like, it started out and then we just went way off track. And at some point, I'm like, but when this didn't end up being about capitalism very much, unless he's arguing that capitalism, that we are killing capitalism, and because we're doing it so wrong, we're headed toward a feudalism like system. 'Cause I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know, he's just been so all over the place that it's been a little bit hard to follow sometimes.
well, to be fair, I think part of the reason is because how we engage this type of economy, it's very broad. Because even what he just like, the last like what three, 3 or 4 minutes, right, in this particular chapter, right, he's talking about the use of AI targeting, right, and it's linked with the same type of political ad or or social media targeting that political parties use it or
Right. Well,
in
there's
order to gain
or even
more votes.
even businesses, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we haven't
Yeah,
caught up to it yet, right? Um, and I would say that targeted ads is a response to an oversaturated system, not just in ad space, right? Or not just in companies that want to produce ads, but in ad space. Where are they going to find their target argument? Which platform are they going to have the most success on? Like, just all these different things. And so um I think if you can have your ad targeted to people who are looking for or likely to buy your product, it's probably going to save your company a lot more money than
yeah,
having
but that's not.
to advertise on all this space, right? So, like, it's
Yeah,
going to take and of course there are like negative implications of that and things like that, but like these things are just, they're natural things that happen. And what's bothering me is that, like, earlier he said that, it drives innovation, it does this, it does that, and we don't have this innovation. He just listed innovation. Now, he doesn't like the innovation, he's complaining about it, he thinks we should have rules against this type of innovation. But what is it that just happened there except innovation? So I don't know. I'm not.
so
Yeah.
look at it from this perspective, right? Nothing in of itself is wrong with ads, companies using targeted ads. I don't think that's necessarily his issue. Like, it's a part it's a part of a mechanism that corporations use, right, to kind of guide us into a another, like a digital feudalistic um, era, right?
I don't even
But
know.
the
I don't even
most
see. But my thing is I don't even think it's about that, right? I really don't. I
no,
think
no,
you have to appreciate.
I'm getting to that part of it. I think what he's more concerned about are the other ways how these mechanisms can be used. And the two, for one of the examples that he gave was Twitter basically turning into like just a straight up right wing propaganda platform, right? Twitter is my playground, right? I've been to multiple different parts and aspects of Twitter in multiple different communities, right? And a large percentage of those communities have like essentially like been killed off and like they've disappeared. And like it's Twitter is basically like
Look, I'm
consisting
not
of two
concerned about
communities
that.
now.
Twitter is one of many platforms. It's not the only platform that exists. I get it hurt the feeling of people who that's their favorite
No,
platform.
no,
I
no,
get
no.
that.
You're
But
missing my
but
point.
I think you missed my point and ran over me, but I will allow you to continue.
Okay. What I'm saying is that it's the mechanism being used to subvert people's choice to vote not just for the company, right? But also for the government.
Okay, so you ran over me to address something I wasn't even going to say. That's cool. So my problem is none of this is new. Not a single bit of it, right? Like yeah, so they're finding a new method to do it and the law will either catch up and address it or not because sometimes it doesn't. But none of this is new. If you think that corporations weren't paying for celebrity sponsors or paying for politicians behind the scenes before, if you think that they didn't have influence, if you think that part of turning us into a consumer driven nation run by advertisement and keeping up with the Jones was not already a part of this long before social media ever existed, then I don't know what to tell you, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm not disputing any of that. I mean, none of what you're saying
and none of it is
is wrong.
capitalism, and I'm so confused.
No,
I got
but
it.
that's yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? Like he's not saying, at least from my understanding, right? He's not saying the rules of capitalism is bad, nor is capitalism bad, right? It seems to me that he's saying, listen, a particular aspect of society, both private and government, right? Well, I wouldn't even say government. I would just say private. Private and parties, right, are taking advantage of certain mechanisms that exist uh, within capitalism, right? Well, for taking advantage of the rules, right, to guide the economy to a feudalistic um, economy. That's basically what I'm getting what he's saying.
Hmm.
You had
Well, no.
sir?
Wait, well, I,
I don't
I, I
think
don't
it's
think this. I don't think this is how he would say it, and I would mostly agree with you. I think really
Okay.
what it is he's lamenting the lack of a rule in capitalism that would prevent these things from happening.
okay. Well,
That-
that's fair, but
yeah.
I don't think it. I don't even necessarily think it's feudalistic. I think it's oligarchical, but like bordering on plutocracy, if not full on plutocracy. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me being picky about words.
But I think I can summarize all of my criticisms of this video into like one single criticism,
Okay.
and that is if he removed all references to the word capitalism and retitled this "The Death of American Freedom,"
Yeah, that would work, I guess.
I would I would be with him because that seems to be what he's actually talking about.
Yeah, that's fair. What are your thoughts on that, Pixie? I got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say that that is a definitely a more accurate title. I don't I don't feel like we talked about capitalism outside of the first like 2 minutes maybe.
Okay. Do you guys, obviously as Americans, do you guys separate capitalism from freedom? Do you think
Yes, you
you?
can have a capitalistic society and not be
Yeah, not be free. I,
yeah.
I think in order to be free, you need those two rules. But that doesn't mean you can't have those rules and then also not be free.
Okay. I think that's a good point. I obviously I've not spent my whole life in the United States, but I think I've learned enough that a lot of people, a lot of Americans, um, do not see freedom or at least liberty without the existence of capitalism, because capitalism, as far as they're concerned, right, is a part of what it means to be free as a people and individual.
I mean,
So
that,
maybe that's his perspective. I don't know, but that's a really excellent point.
yeah, the rules allow you to be free, but they don't prevent you from being not free.
From being not free. Yeah, that's the hot take of the day. All right, so Pixie, are you smelling bullshit or you smell some pixie dust?
No.
If you're talking, your mic is muted.
Probably dealing with something.
Well, we
Oh.
lost Pixie to the wolves. They must have came in our house.
All right, what are your thoughts, Sir Midnight?
Well, uh, regarding what he said that by talking to this AI, you're actually training it to fuck you over more. Okay, sure, but at the same time, I've had interesting conversations with Twitter's AI, so half and half, I guess.
Bro, you replaced me with an AI? You
You're not around, man. You're busy. What do you want?
Oh, so it's all about the convenience, huh? Okay. Okay. Take
Oh,
corporations
and
AI
also,
over
also,
me.
also, 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 I was also, I don't know if you know this, or Dean, maybe you don't remember. I was actually born in Italy, and I came here in 1993, so I'm not even American. I mean, I'm legalized, like, I'm
You're
naturalized,
you're
obviously.
yeah, you're an American, bro.
Yeah.
Most
Well,
people that are here aren't, at least
Well,
their ancestors probably aren't naturally born,
yeah, haven't you noticed that whenever he talks, he sounds like he's moving his arms?
Right?
bumpity boopity.
So, are you mad? Some pixie dust or bullshit midnight?
I guess I'm mid.
Mid? Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, sir?
Yeah, I guess really it's just that single criticism I have. I'm mid in that there's lots of factual information in here. But on the flip side, this is false advertisement.
I would. Oh, go ahead.
That's part of the business, bro. Look at all them
Yeah.
them video titles. Maybe his title, right, is basically clickbait just to get you to watch this video.
Well, yeah.
I
But
should
but
leave him the
then.
criticism is I like the facts in your video, but quit being an Amazon with your title.
Do
That's fair.
it. But no, like your question about whether people under capitalism are free or not, obviously raises the question of what freedom actually is. But that's getting too deep in philosophy.
Yeah.
Because what is freedom anyway? Like,
We
yeah,
have
I can
liberty.
say I'm free.
We don't have this anarchy shit. We got liberty. All right. So I guess we'll wait until Pixie comes back or whenever she can
Oh, I've
talk.
been listening. I'm sorry, I had to
Oh,
go tend to the dogs.
Yeah.
Yep, knew it.
fur babies.
Yeah, I was starting to worry you made fun of a bald guy and got attacked you with some bears.
My goodness.
God damn it! That Bible thing never gets old.
Now, Onyx was getting okay. Copper was very insistent on the puppy was very insistent on playing with Onyx, and Onyx is old, and she was just like, "Leave me the fuck alone." So I went and got them both food. And they're
Can,
both
Ah,
can I say though, if we added about 20,000 years of evolution and selective breeding, I was correct about what happened to Pixie.
oh
happy.
boy.
The wolves
What
came
did you?
and got her.
Yeah.
So, Pixie, are we calling bullshit? Are you mad? There's some pixie dust in this
No, I'm
chapter.
not mad. Most of it was factual. Sometimes I was like, "You're close, but you're off." But I just feel like I was ready for some for some like capitalism and and it just wasn't there. I was like, "What is this?"
Okay. So you're mid.
Yeah,
Okay.
like but I'm mostly fine with it though.
All right.
6 minutes
So,
to go.
all right. Let's see his conclusion.
What we ultimately have is money being extracted to systems that do not grow or scale the way a capitalist system does, by expanding the assembly line or opening more chain restaurants or researching and patenting a new type of refrigerant. And I am personally convinced that the market will crash again and more money will be borrowed and printed that will ultimately be invested into the further transformation into a rent-based economy. During World War I, America's debt to GDP ratio was 35%. In World War II, as we strained every single resource that we had, it skyrocketed to 121%, meaning that we had 21% more debt than value as a nation. Our debt to GDP ratio once again skyrocketed after the 2008 crisis, and it just kept rising. And right now, we are at 123%, higher than it has ever been in the history of our economy. Our national debt as of February 2025 is $36.5 trillion.
Pause it for a second, because I don't think this guy's doing this on purpose, because this is just how everyone that doesn't know any better talks about it.
Yeah.
What you need to do to understand what this information actually is you need to replace the term U.S. debt with U.S. money in circulation.
Okay.
Right? Because that, like, the U.S. debt is a direct measurement of that. That's all it is.
U.S. money in circulation. Can we Google that?
This is how money is
I'll look
made.
at that.
Well, this is how like M0 money is made, like your currency.
Yeah. Okay.
Total debt is 102 trillion. I would say that we're well past the point of no return, but I don't even know what that is because this is so unprecedented. And I assume that it would be easier to change the value and concept of money than it would be to repay that level of debt. And it's worth pointing out that the primary owner of that debt isn't China or Japan.
Real quick. He is probably correct. Probably correct. It would probably be easier to change the concept of what money is, because if we paid back the national debt, we wouldn't have any money.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay. All right.
Assume that it would be easier to change the value and concept of money than it would be to repay that level of debt. And it's worth pointing out that the primary owner of that debt isn't China or Japan or even our own Federal Reserve. It's US investors. As this cycle continues to snowball, money will be less and less valuable, not only because of inflation, but in principle. When the government is so closely entangled with the people who have benefited the most from this mass extraction of wealth from a capitalist economy, it stops making sense to think of wealth as money. Hear me out. Here's a helpful metaphor from the book Stalin, the Court of the Red Tsar. There's a story
Don't be triggered.
where Stalin and his
Triggered.
powerful entourage of officials was traveling by motorcade when they came across a peasant woman struggling to push her cart up a hill. Stalin saw this and ordered the cars to stop and inquired about her situation. He wanted to give her some money to help her, but not one person in his entire entourage had a single ruble of cash on them. And that's because their wealth was in ideological power and influence. They didn't need cash because no matter how lavish their appetite, whatever they desired would be given to them. It wasn't until the deeply organized experiment of communism fell that the Soviet ruling class had to convert their wealth to a tradable commodity as oligarchs. Unfortunately for oligarchs, money can't buy everything. Money alone can't change laws. It can't force people to dress the way you want them to dress or to identify in a way that aligns with how you see them. It can't make ideologies against the law. It can't allow you to change the race, culture, or ethnicity of your neighbors. You can't buy someone else's choice to be or not be a parent, to graduate or transcend from those unfathomable limits of what money's wealth can get you. You need to control the power of information so that you can manipulate the world that you live in. And I believe that that is exactly what's happening. And unfortunately, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. If you've stuck with me this long to listen to and consider my entire manifesto here, thank you. And all I ask is that you consider the information in this video when you make personal decisions, read the news, or spend your precious time on this planet participating in the post-capitalist economy. I suppose you want some advice on how to educate yourself about current events when an exceeding amount of news organizations are owned by billionaires and sometimes even governments. Well, Ground News. Come here, I'll show you. It's an app and website that collects news articles from around the world and organizes them by political bias, reliability, and potential.
Closing ad.
Boss. Oh, look,
Yep.
he's advertising one of those middlemen he talked about.
Yeah, right? That's exactly what was coming across my mind.
Hey, he needs to be hypocritical to make money.
Well,
So-
see, and that just kind of reinforces the point, right? Like, I don't think the point of his video was to like critique capitalism. I think he's talking about what can kill capitalism. I think he values it. He probably is just afraid that it'll probably die based on at least behaviors that he's observed.
Yeah.
But
I just wish he was more accurate and more specific about what he was critiquing.
what he was critiquing, yeah, that's fair.
Because he could have like he did all this work and gathered together this information, which was, I would say, mostly factual. Right. So he could have actually helped people realize what was going on and what they needed to change. But what people are going to do is they're going to watch this video, read that title, hear his definition, and go, you know what? Communism.
You're
Which
right.
actually he's making a case in the video that the marketplace on its own is becoming like communism and how it's controlling you.
Mhm.
So he's actually, I think, making it worse.
Yep, and that's what I was saying. Like, I don't get the impression that he's like anti-capitalism. I think he's probably at least. I mean, look at the shit that he has, right? Like, he's probably a very very pro-capitalism. I think it's a situation where he's not necessarily affected by the big red scare in the same way everyone, like older people are, right? I think he is more so afraid of the big corporate scare, right? Where they're gonna lead us back to a form of um, communism, or feudalism.
I mean, I get that, but I don't think they necessarily need to. Right? I don't think they need to go to that extreme to be effective. I think we practically are a corporate oligarchy. And they influence us on so many levels that it's almost indistinctive, right? But they influence us because they want our money. They don't really want to control our every aspect. That's too much on one company. They don't want to deal with that. They just want our money and they want to find out how to get it, right? I don't know.
I'm just gonna say, you pass the law, you reinstate the law that limits how much of things businesses and people can own. And then about 10 years later, you reinstitute the law that says corporations have to die after a certain period of time. All these problems go away.
And somebody's gonna clip this and call Serb a communist, socialist, anarchist, anti-capitalist. he hates money.
Sure. There's a phrase, or there's, I forget who said it, but it is as long as, what is it? Okay, I'm not going to get it completely correct. As long as bad people die, evil will never win.
Well, if corporations are immortal,
Yeah, if you make
shit.
psychopaths immortal, then evil can win.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So what do you guys think about his conclusion? Are we mid or some bullshit? Some pixie dust in there?
Yeah, I
Be objective. I know
don't
you've
think.
been triggered,
Well,
stirred.
I don't think his prediction is that on the nose.
Okay.
I think you. So there's these studies on advertisement that show over time as advertising increases, the less effective it is. Right, populations become inoculated to kinds of bullshit. Right, so I think this type of control only goes so far until everyone starts to become aware that it's there. And once everyone starts to become more and more aware that it's there, they're going to actively go around it, and it's not going to work anymore.
Hashtag ad blocks.
Yeah, like that's a good example.
So what's your rating for this last end? Or last part of the video? We're gonna do bullshit, pixie dust, or mid?
Can I do what games journalists do for video games that aren't very good? I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10.
If you give it a 7 out of 10, you're gonna give it a pixie dust, bro.
No. In video games industry, a 7 out of 10 is like a 2 out of 10. In reality, never mind. It was a joke. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I know.
There are some.
You triggered me a while ago, but
I'm trying to weigh out here. There's factual information in there that people should know. He's making some good points. He's not talking about capitalism, even though he's pretending to. And then there's just a few random misinformation things in there. I'm gonna say it's like a 6 out of 10 in reality. It's above average, but still kind of meh.
Serb
Okay.
stole my number.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's a mid. What about you, Pixie?
He stole my number. I was going for like a 6.5.
Oh, okay.
You're not allowed to have it now that I have it.
Oh, damn, Pixie. You gotta pick something else.
No, you do 6
No,
out
I
of 10.
don't.
He confiscated that one, so you can't get it anymore.
Like, I've
Yeah.
been saying the same thing the whole time. He had some good information in there. Sometimes when the information wasn't so good, he was so close. But it was, it was like talking to a very stoned and very knowledgeable friend in a very abstract way.
The music is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Relaxing.
Actually, there you go. This is a video. Someone who does video essays on topics that he reads a lot of Wikipedia articles on. That's what this is.
Yeah.
He read Wikipedia for like a week.
Or maybe
And
not
then
even
have a
that. Let's
camera.
just say he went and checked out some books, right? I mean,
I don't
but
know.
like,
Musician? I'm guessing he's a musician.
but he
Yeah.
did work for a venture capitalist, remember? Company.
Yeah, he did say that too.
Yeah, but musicians don't read books.
Aw,
That's
some
I know.
do.
Okay, yeah, the ones that aren't successful, right? The ones that don't
He
play the
was
music
so
to the point that they're
successful. Why
successful.
did if he was a successful musician, why did he end up at the venture capitalist?
Maybe he loved money more? I don't know.
I'm just arguing with Serb at this point.
Yes.
I know.
Look, I'm not saying they can't read. They just choose to not.
Yeah.
We don't. I'll agree with that.
Says the person reading a book.
No, you
I,
just
I am reading a
only
book. I am reading a book.
it's
But
Yeah,
just
so I don't want to hear it, Bond.
there's only 24 hours in a day, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
They generally don't take the time to read the book because it takes too much time.
yeah. Well, he has
generally, yes.
time
Yeah.
to dive into finance and work at a venture capitalist company, so maybe he wasn't dedicating that much time to his music.
It's
That's all
true.
I'm
It's
saying.
true. But I
Yeah.
would bet what this guy did is he went to ChatGPT, paid for the subscription so it would read it to him, and then asked it to read the Wikipedia articles on the subjects he's talking about.
Or he got other people to research for him and
That's
then
true.
come talk to him and
Could've done
built it on that.
That's his venture capitalism.
There you go. What about you, Midnight? What's your score? Is he a MIDI? Is he spewing some bullshit or some pixie dust?
5 out of
Hey,
10.
real quick, I'll be
All right,
back
MIDI.
in just a few minutes. I'll be back.
Okay, Bond.
His girlfriend came over. Okay. All right. I think I can stop sharing this now.
Yes.
Thank you guys very, very much for engaging in this conversation, giving a lot more nuance to this video, which I obviously suspected, because even when he briefly spoke about anything regarding, like, you know, um, real estate, right? I'm like, there's a couple other things that he didn't
Yeah.
mention there, but I understand that this is a
You know,
big.
despite many people, many people on here, talking a lot, we managed to get through the entire video. Good luck. Good luck if it was on Talk's channel.
We
Yeah,
did
I mean,
the video.
it,
Look at us.
it took us 3.5 hours to do 50 minutes. Just gotta
Oh my
remember that.
god. That was so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me? So guys, I'm gonna tally up your pixie dusts, your middies, and your bullshit. You ready?
I
So
think I just
Pixie.
had one section where I was like straight bullshit.
Actually, you had the most mids out of everyone.
Yeah,
You're
because
more
he had such
charitable.
accurate information. He was just being weird about it.
Yep. So let's see here. So 5 pixie dusts, 5 middies, and 1 bullshit.
Straight bullshit. That was straight
Yeah.
bullshit.
It was straight bullshit. All right. So Serb. Serb has 5 bullshit, 4 pixie dusts, and 3 middies. What you got to say about yourself, Serb? You didn't hate it as much.
Yeah, I saw the Karl Marx picture. I saw the boo capitalism bad, and I was like, I was so ready to just go on a 1-minute spiel about how Russians starved to death.
So midnight. Let's see here. So midnight has 2 BSs, 4 pixie dusts, and 5 middies. Yep.
Neat.
But I don't know. I think it's one of those videos that's it's probably there for the purposes of starting a conversation, which I don't have a problem with those videos. And again, we're used to clickbait, you know, by now. Um, but I will confess that part of the reason why I wanted to do this with Serve outside of his knowledge, of course, is because I know that there are certain parts of the video that's going to trigger him, and that's like literally the only way you can trigger Serve.
It's true. Economics is how you trigger me, but no one ever really talks about it in depth around here. So everyone thinks I'm stoic or something.
Well, I mean, you are, but you have your Achilles heels like this one get triggered.
Yep, yep.
Is this where I go in with the dairy thing? We weaponize cheese.
Oh boy.
Economics is more interesting than people think it is.
I think it is too.
Well, yeah, people want to talk about God though.
You should.
God this,
You
God
should.
that.
You should all be really interested in economics because it's how you feed yourself.
I know, right?
But isn't economics just buy and sell and
No.
that's it?
Yeah, it's how the lead comes from one country, the wood comes from another country, and the eraser and the metal pieces come from other people, and it's all shipped around the country and assembled in 5 different places, and it gets to Walmart so you can write your note.
Or it's how a tasteless, or it's how a very, very tasteless product that the natives used to chew on long trips to keep their mouth wet, to keep
Oh,
from getting dry and dehydrated, turned into bubble gum.
Pretty
Interesting.
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. They would take the sap from the trees and they would process it and boil it and all that, and it would come out in this like crumbly powder kind of stuff. And they would, when they would have to go on a long journey and they didn't know if they would have like quick access to like clean water and stuff, they would just take it to chew on it to keep their mouth from getting dry and stuff like that. And then somebody came along and they were like, I wonder what happens when I add flavor and sugar and sell it.
okay. We should plan on doing this again for another video, and I have the cliffhanger for us whenever we want to go off air.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna try to find um probably a shorter video that goes into more specifics about the rules of capitalism and I guess their criticism. Because I understand that this guy is taking a much broader perspective of this, but I think you guys are right that his he kind of lied to us, right? Like he wasn't announcing necessarily, he wasn't like critiquing capitalism, right? So because he didn't even really mention capitalism that much, or even like the rules or how people participate, you know, with the rules in mind, you know. Um, so yeah, I think I'll try to see if I can find another video that'll kind of get more into it, with a little bit of less communist stuff. So I
I
wonder, my
liked
friend
his
Serb.
delivery though. He was quite entertaining.
Yeah, it was pretty good to watch.
Yeah. Are we ready for the cliffhanger?
Oh,
boy.
okay. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So we gave women the right to vote.
Uh-huh.
We got prohibition, largely championed by women, which then led to us having to over subsidize dairy farmers, which then led us to have to create a multinational psyop, which made us weaponize cheese.
Interesting.
And if you want to know about how all that fits together, you have to watch the next video.
Okay. All right.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, we can.
This is what happens when you give women the right to vote before you give them control of their own education.
No, it wasn't really that. It's just there's a butterfly effect, and I thought it made it more interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. That what was the like? They would go to finishing school. What the hell are you learning in finishing school? How to set the proper placemats? Like fuck that nonsense.
Well, you also learned how to criticize your husband.
No. See, you're supposed to help your husband criticize everybody else, and you and your husband do not have it. Like you have an argument behind closed doors, and when you walk out the door, he's the best person ever, and that's
No,
that's,
you
that's
weren't
all
taught.
anybody needs to know.
No, you weren't taught to argue with him. What you were taught to do is to tell him he's wrong without saying he's wrong.
No, what you do is you spike the drink, and then his ass just goes to sleep, and you have some fun. Yeah, you turn the music up, and you dance by your own damn self.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, cut the video.
Cut the feed. Cut the feed.